Chapter 4079. The right head of the strange snake spoke. We are too far away, your speed is too slow. By the time you reach the land of no elders, I am afraid it will be too late. But, Chu Huachang had a headache. You are too ugly. She sighed in her heart. The holy spirits of others were either majestic or picturesque. But when it came to her turn, it was such an ugly appearance that people couldn't bear to look at it. The strange snake was furious. I am ugly? I am ugly? You little girl are blind. Actually saying that I am ugly, you are the ugliest one. Chu Huachang's face was black, and she didn't argue with him. Millions of miles away, someone was riding on a human-faced leopard spirit beast. He laughed and shouted, Hurry up, I can't wait to meet the heroes of this world. I want to see if they are more powerful than me. The leopard-tattooed saint spirit said angrily, Brat, I am your Tao protector, not your mount. Don't tell me what to do. If you keep talking, I will throw you down. The man laughed and said, You throw one for me to see. If you throw me, no one will snatch the primordial spirit fruit for you. The Holy Spirit with the leopard face was furious. At this moment, the Holy Spirits moved out one after another, with their chosen bearers and rushed to the land of no elders. The spiritual energy between heaven and earth was chaotic, and the cultivator in the great cosmological realm found that there were so many powerful existences in this world, and they couldn't help but tremble a little. They have lived here for more than 10 years, but few people have encountered holy spirits, and they never knew that this great cosmological realm was so dangerous. Fortunately, most of these holy spirits were in a corner, and they had never harmed others before. Otherwise, how could anyone survive now? Any holy spirit here was not something they could contend with. The land of no elders was about to open, and a vision of heaven and earth appeared. The great cosmological realm was boiling, and countless cultivator gathered in the land of no elders from all directions. In just 10 days, there were no less than 3,000 people gathered in the periphery of the land of no elders. This was the first batch to arrive here, and as time passed, more people would come. A month later, there were no less than 200,000 people gathered outside the land of the ancients. At this point, there were no more people coming. Even if there were, they were scattered, and their numbers were small. In other words, almost all the cultivator who was still alive in the great cosmological realm were gathered here. When initial Star City was engulfed by the fog of the great cosmological abyss, there were more than 200,000 people. That was nearly 3 or 4 times the number, or even 1 million. After more than a decade, there were only so many people left. This showed how dangerous the great cosmological abyss was. And this time, with the opening of the land of the elders, how many of them would be able to return safely? On the outskirts of the land of the ancients, the cultivator gathered in groups and set up their own camps. The holy spirits also unceremoniously released their powerful auras, each occupying a piece of land, causing others to shrink back in fear and respect. Everyone looked up at the sky in a daze, staring at the ever-changing 7-colored light. This light was said to be the door of the land of the ancients, but it was not fully open yet, so no one could enter it. When the light was completely stable, it was the day when the secret plane opened. Chu Huashang, Gu Pan, Lin Feng, Su Zhen, and Ning Dao Ran were all here. At this moment, they were gathered together, talking and laughing, talking about their experiences in recent years. Behind the 5 people, the 5 holy spirits were watching this place from a distance, not only concerned about the safety of their bearers, but also coveting the lives of other bearers. If they could kill a few more bearers here, it would also reduce some competitors for them. The hostility was pervasive, but under the mutual fear, no one dared to make a move easily. The 2 strange snakes crept forward, their long forked tongues silently curling up, and then suddenly retracted. Chu Huashang turned her head angrily. If you dare to eat him, I will leave now. The left head of the strange snake said, Eat what? What is there to eat? Chu Huashang gritted her teeth and said, Open your right mouth. The right head of the strange snake turned aside, and the 2 triangular snake eyes looked up. I'm going. Chu Huashang got up decisively. Don't eat, don't eat. The left head of the strange snake yelled, the right mouth opened, and a wet cultivator was spat out from it. After the cultivator landed, he looked at it blankly. He didn't know when he was rolled into the mouth of the Holy Spirit. When he reacted, his face suddenly turned pale, and he screamed and turned into a escape light to fly away. The strange snake snorted. The ugly girl cares too much. There are so many people here. It doesn't matter if I eat one or two of them. The nearby cultivator were all ashen-faced, and they all stayed away from the strange snake. Be honest, I'll stare at you. Chu Huashang reached out and poked her eyes, and glared at the strange snake fiercely. Su Zhen's mouth twitched and said, Fei Senior is really interesting. The two strange snakes are the Holy Spirit Fei. Su Zhen saw that he was restrained by Chu Huashang, and couldn't help but be envious. His Zhu Yan is not so good to talk to. In the past few years, he has been with Zhu Yan, and has been beaten by him. So ugly. Chu Huashang looked disgusted and changed the topic. Why hasn't little brother Yang come yet? He should have arrived early. The furthest one of them is Chu Huashang. Even she arrived here 3 days ago, but she hasn't seen Yang Kai. It's a bit strange. Su Zhen said. I contacted brother Yang earlier. He seems to be being hunted. Chu Huashang was shocked. Hunted? Who is hunted by? Su Zhen said. Several enemies of the heavenly moon demon spider joined forces, and ambushed them halfway. It took a lot of time to fight all the way. Chu Huashang was stunned. Hey, it's coming. Su Zhen suddenly turned his head, and looked in a certain direction, only to see a fierce aura rapidly approaching. In the blink of an eye, it had arrived in front of him, and transformed into a beautiful young girl. That young girl was carrying a person in her hand. If it wasn't Kai Yang, who else could it be? At this moment, Kai Yang was like an octopus wrapped around the young girl's body, hugging her tightly as he complained. Why do you have so many enemies? How did you manage to survive until now? Zhu Juyin sneered and said, A few clowns also want to go against the queen? If it was one-on-one, the queen would have killed them all. While talking, he stared coldly at Yang Kai. Let go. Yang Kai suddenly let go of his hand, and stood side by side with her in the void. He straightened his clothes, and recalled the experience along the way. He couldn't help but sigh. In the past month, at least 5 waves of attacks had been encountered. Several holy spirits had ambushed them on the road ahead. They had fought more than a dozen big and small battles. The most dangerous time was when they were besieged by 3 holy spirits. Zhu Juyin was also really good. He took him to block those enemies and arrived here safely. But a lot of time was wasted. They had just arrived, and there were 5 powerful auras behind them. It was the 5 holy spirits who had chased them all the way. The 5 holy spirits had turned into human forms. There were men and women, old and young. They looked at Zhu Juyin with hatred, as if they couldn't wait to pull out his tendons and skin him. Yang Kai's heart was beating like a drum. Senior, they are coming, can you stop them? Zhu Juyin simply replied, I can't stop them. Then we are in danger. Yang Kai's face was dignified. Let's avoid them for a while and wait for this place to really open. Don't worry, Zhu Juyin comforted. Once we are here, they won't make a move anymore. Why? Yang Kai did not understand. They also have enemies. If they make a move here, they will be looking for trouble. Zhu Juyin sneered. It was indeed as she said. The 5 holy spirits chased them all the way here. Although they were all furious, no one made a move on Zhu Juyin. Yang Kai also keenly felt that there were powerful auras locking onto the 5 holy spirits. It seemed like they were the enemies that Zhu Juyin had mentioned. Although they don't dare to make a move on me, you have to be careful. Don't be harmed by them. Zhu Juyin reminded Yang Kai. Remember their auras. If you meet their bearers in the land of elders, kill them for me. Yang Kai frowned. They also have bearers? Why didn't I see them? Zhu Juyin chuckled. Naturally, they are hiding in the crowd and are unwilling to show themselves. But since they are here, they must have already chosen their bearers. They definitely won't come empty-handed. Yang Kai nodded. Understood. Turning his head to look behind, he was stunned. The gate of the land of elders was majestic and magnificent. The 7-colored light was twisting non-stop, and there was a great mystery hidden inside. And at the periphery of the land of elders, the holy spirits with powerful auras each occupied a territory. They were either alone, hiding their bearers in the crowd, or bringing their bearers along to protect them. Yang Kai was shocked. With a glance, there were at least 50 holy spirits gathered here. What a terrifying force. These 50 holy spirits were equivalent to more than 50 high-level heaven splitters outside. There were probably very few blessed lands that had such a foundation. Most of these holy spirits had transformed into human forms, but there were also some that maintained their original forms. All of them were like mountains, mighty and majestic. Yang Kai saw Kuan Sha. This guy was coldly sizing him up, not hiding his killing intent at all. There were also Fei, Kuei Niu, Zhu Yan by Fong Nu Fong. He had only heard of these holy spirits before but had never seen them before. Today it was an eye-opener, and Yang Kai couldn't help but click his tongue in wonder. These holy spirits weren't all the holy spirits in the great cosmological realm. Zhu Jiuyin had said before that some holy spirits were content with the status quo and didn't want to leave the great cosmological realm, so they naturally wouldn't get involved in this mess. However, what made Yang Kai feel strange was that he didn't see the dragon and phoenix holy spirits. Previously, in Crouching Dragon Mountain, he had obtained the Earth-type giant dragon pearl and thought that there was a dragon race in the great cosmological realm. But now, it seemed that the dead giant dragon was probably the last divine dragon. This made him feel slightly regretful. These days, he hadn't made any contracts with Zhu Jiuyin, because he wanted to see if he could find a giant dragon. If there was a dragon race here, he would have more and better choices. Chapter 4080. Yu He and the rest had arrived a long time ago, and were looking forward to it. They occupied a territory and kept waving at Yang Kai. After meeting up, they asked about Yang Kai's experience in the past month, and were all shocked. After chatting for a while, Yang Kai said, "Senior, it's time to talk about the situation in the Land of Elders." "I don't know." Zhu Jiuyin shook his head. Yang Kai was stunned. "How can you not know?" He had not asked Zhu Jiuyin about the Land of Elders before, and thought that Zhu Jiuyin would tell him when the time was right. Who knew that he would receive such an answer when he took the initiative to ask? "I can't enter the Land of Elders, so how would I know?" Zhu Jiuyin snorted. If they could enter the Land of Elders, why would they need to choose a bearer? They would have gone to snatch the opportunity themselves. Yang Kai frowned. "Although you can't enter, didn't you have a bearer before?" At this point, Yang Kai suddenly realized that Zhu Jiuyin did have a bearer before, but that bearer had died inside. She might not know what was going on inside. "Then what do you know? What do I have to do after entering?" Yang Kai settled for the next best thing. Zhu Jiuyin said, "I only know that there are countless treasures inside, but the most important one is the primordial fruit tree. Every time the Land of Elders opens, the primordial fruit tree will appear. However, only one primordial spirit fruit can be plucked before it disappears. If we want to leave the great cosmological abyss, we have to consume that primordial spirit fruit. That's why it's called the spirit-seizing war." Primordial spirit fruit. Yang Kai's eyes lit up. Anything that was named primordial must be extraordinary. Zhu Jiuyin rolled his eyes at him. "Don't think too much. That fruit won't be of much use to you. We were born and raised in the great cosmological abyss, but we're also trapped in the great cosmological abyss. Fortunately, there's always a way out. That primordial spirit fruit was specially born for us. If you can pick that primordial spirit fruit and bring it to me, you'll definitely benefit from it." Yang Kai nodded, but he didn't agree with her. He was skeptical about her words. Zhu Jiuyin was probably afraid that he would eat the primordial spiritual fruit. As for whether it was useful or not, he didn't know for the time being. You'll have to find the primordial fruit tree by yourself. You'll also have to identify the primordial spirit fruit by yourself. Don't try anything funny. Bring the primordial spirit fruit to me obediently, and I won't mistreat you." Yang Kai nodded repeatedly, thinking to himself that when the time comes for him to obtain the spirit fruit, it would not be up to him. As if sensing what Yang Kai was thinking, Zhu Jiuyin took a deep look at him, and a mocking smile hung on the corner of his mouth. "Senior, I'm going over there to meet some old friends. Please accompany me." Yang Kai pointed in the direction of Su Zhen and the others. "What's there to meet? Don't create unnecessary trouble. This queen needs to recuperate, so you stay here obediently." Zhu Jiuyin snorted coldly and sat down cross-legged. She had consumed a lot of energy in this 1 month, so she naturally wanted to recover quickly. Yang Kai was speechless. He glanced at Su Zhen and the others and shook his head. Without Zhu Juin's protection, he would never dare to go alone. Not to mention, the divine spirits who had been chasing after Zhu Juin would not let go of the opportunity to kill him so easily. As long as he was killed, Zhu Juin's plan would fail, so they naturally wouldn't be stingy. Time passed slowly. 200,000 people gathered at the periphery of the Elder's land, waiting quietly. It wasn't until a certain day more than 10 days later that the ever-changing rainbow light suddenly froze for a moment before twisting and changing at an even faster speed. At the same time, the world energy of the entire great cosmological realm crazily surged in this direction. The heavens and earth were stirred up, and in an instant sand and stones flew everywhere. All the divine spirits looked up at the door of the Elder's land. "It's about to open," a divine spirit shouted. The 200,000 people were immediately in high spirits as they looked at the door. Zhu Juin also opened her eyes and looked over. She stretched out her hand and said, "Kid, come here." Yang Kai walked over obediently. "Senior, what are your orders?" "There's only one sentence. This trip can only succeed and not fail. If you fail, you will have no value to me. Do you know what that means?" Zhu Juin looked at him indifferently. Yang Kai nodded expressionlessly. "Of course I understand." "Good." At the same time, many divine spirits were also exhorting their bearers, either encouraging or threatening them. Gu Pan stood in front of the Kuei cow and said seriously, "Grandpa Cow, don't worry. I will definitely pluck that primordial spirit fruit for you and bring you out of here." The Kuei cow transformed into a kind old man with white hair and long eyebrows that reached his chest. He smiled and said, "Just do your best. The most important thing is that you come back safely." Gu Pan nodded vigorously. Fei also turned into a human form with 2 heads. It was very evil. The snake tongue in his mouth was swallowing and hissing. "Ugly girl, if you fail, don't blame me for eating you. Eat all day. I will take the primordial spirit fruit and eat it." Chu Huashang said angrily. Fei's 2 faces changed slightly. "Just kidding. Well, you must bring that primordial spirit fruit out to me. I will give you a lot of benefits." On the other side, Su Zhen covered his head and looked angry. "Why do you always beat me?" Scarlet Ape's fist landed on Su Zhen's forehead, and a shiny 3-inch-high bump bulged out. Scarlet Ape said, "If you don't bring that primordial spirit fruit to me, it won't be as simple as beating you up. Do you hear me?" Su Zhen gritted his teeth. "You wait. Wait for me to take you out and let you be my mount for 500 years. Zhu Yan smiled coldly. "If you really have the ability, I will be your mount for 500 years. What's the harm?" The Holy Spirit's life was long, and 500 years was just a moment for them. "If you succeed, you live. If you fail, you die." Kuan Sha looked at Lin Feng and said concisely. Lin Feng's face was livid. "You don't need to say more." Not far away, Ning Daoran had a carefree expression on his face. Zhu Jian, who had transformed into a middle-aged man, was extremely worried. "Kid, you better be more careful. That primordial spiritual fruit is extremely important to me. When it's time to snatch it, you have to snatch it. Don't show mercy," Ning Daoran said. "Master, don't worry. I will do my best." Zhu Jian sighed. If only that were the case. He felt indignant in his heart. Why did he choose such a person as his successor? How could he accomplish great things with such an easygoing attitude? The spiritual chi of heaven and earth was constantly converging towards the door of the land of elders, and the 7-colored light was getting more and more condensed and dazzling. 3 days later, the multicolored light suddenly fell. Then, as if a pair of invisible hands separated the multicolored light into 2 sides, revealing a multicolored passage that led directly to the land of everlastingness. Everyone's spirits were shaken. They looked inside, but as far as their eyes could see, they couldn't see anything at all. The door of the land of elders was open. In the crowd, a few people turned into streamers and flashed into the 7-colored passage, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Some people couldn't hold back anymore and rushed in first. More than 200,000 martial artists rushed towards the door. Although the door was large, There were simply too many people gathered here. As they rushed in, some people were immediately squeezed out of the seven-colored passageway and fell into the depths of the abyss. Miserable screams rang out, and under everyone's watchful eyes, the cultivators who were squeezed out of the seven-colored channel were stripped of their flesh and blood. In less than 3 breaths of time, all of them turned into skeletons. Then, the skeletons broke apart inch by inch, turning into dust that scattered in the air, completely disappearing from this world. "There's great danger outside the passage," someone shouted in fear, and with a pale face he quickly retreated. The cultivator who noticed this did not dare to push anymore, fearing that he would be pushed out of the passage and meet with some mishap. Many of the divine spirits were happily watching this scene, causing the surrounding cultivators to curse. The divine spirits were obviously aware of this situation, but none of them had warned them. Obviously, in the eyes of these divine spirits, their deaths were not worth paying attention to. They only needed to take care of their bearers, so why would they care about others? Hundreds of lives were lost, and people knew about the dangers outside the passage. The successors were very careful and stayed far away from the edge of the passage. But soon another change happened. There was a cultivator who walked in the middle of the passage, but he was also screaming in pain, and his flesh was peeled off and turned into a skeleton. The cultivator around was shocked and turned to look, not knowing what was going on. It was not only one cultivator, but more than a dozen people in front and behind had the same experience, dying tragically in various parts of the seven-colored passage. This scene made many cultivators bewildered. They did not know why they died in the passage. Someone suddenly realized. Heaven-opening realm. They are all heaven-opening realm. Heaven-opening realm cannot enter this elder's land. Those who enter will die. Hearing his shout, everyone came back to their senses. Thinking carefully, the dozen people who died were indeed heaven-opening realm. Qi Xing's group was about to step into the passage under the lead of a few heads. But the great head immediately stopped. Chen Tianfei and the rest behind him were also covered in cold sweat. The few of them had almost stepped into the passageway. If they had really stepped in, they would have died on the spot. Not far away, Yang Kai's face sank. He turned to look at Zhu Jiuyin. "Senior, heaven-opening realm cannot enter this elder's land." Zhu Jiuyin looked at him deeply. "If I could enter the heaven-opening realm, why would I find you to be my inheritor?" That sword pavilion's pavilion master had the cultivation of the 6th stage heaven-opening realm. Zhu Jiuyin would naturally choose him. "Why didn't you say so earlier?" Yang Kai was furious. Zhu Jiuyin smiled faintly. "Is it too late to say it now? You have nothing to lose." Yang Kai suppressed his anger. "It's not too late. This was going to be troublesome." Initially, he was still thinking of bringing Yu He and the rest along. It would be best if they could obtain the natural spirit fruit in the land of the ancients. However, if they could not obtain it, he would bring them along and flee. Although Zhu Jiuyin was strong, Yang Kai was prepared. He might not be unable to escape her pursuit. Now, everything was empty talk. Yu He and the rest could not enter the elder's land. They had to stay with Zhu Jiuyin, which was equivalent to sending hostages to her hands. Unless Yang Kai did not care about Yu He and the rest's lives, he would have to face her after coming out of the elder's land. And Zhu Jiuyin had obviously expected this. He deliberately did not mention this to Yang Kai. He wanted to catch him unprepared. Both of them were clear about their plans. In the end, Zhu Jiuyin was more skilled. Chapter 4081. Don't worry. I will take good care of your servants for you. Don't worry about them in the land of elders, just serve this queen well, Zhu Jiuyin said. Yang Kai nodded with a gloomy expression. The heaven-opening realm cultivators were unable to step into the land of elders. So Yu He, Lu Shui, and Guozian could only stay outside, greatly reducing their battle strength. This was secondary. The most important thing was that Yu He and the others were in Zhu Jiuyin's hands. So even if Yang Kai had a rebellious heart, he would not dare to betray them. Guozian looked at the cultivator who had followed him to Yang Kai in the early years and shouted, "Follow the master forward. You must protect the master's safety with your lives, understand?" Everyone shouted, "Understood." Yang Kai glanced at them and shook his head with a bitter smile. although they had been cultivating diligently all these years, and their strength had increased greatly. If they really encountered a danger that they could not resolve, they would not be of much help. "Let's go," Yang Kai called out to everyone, and dozens of people followed behind him, stepping into the door. In this short period of time, at least tens of thousands of people had rushed into the land of elders, and when Yang Kai led a group of people into the rainbow tunnel, more than half of the 200,000 people had disappeared. The seven-colored passageway was like the maw of an invisible beast, constantly swallowing the cultivators in the area. The tunnel was crowded and bustling, and a group of people protected Yang Kai in the middle as they rushed forward side by side. Not long after, an angry shout came from the front. "Reckless fools! How dare you look for trouble with my DT on? Brothers, chop them to death!" In the next moment, the tunnel in front of them exploded with violent energy fluctuations as countless people fought. The power of secret techniques and artifacts flew everywhere, turning the tunnel in front into a bloody battlefield. Screams rang out as corpses fell to the ground, blood flowing like a river. Yang Kai had a strange expression on his face. He looked in the direction of the voice and saw a familiar figure. That voice just now sounded familiar. It was Dtion's leader, Ding Yi. Ever since they parted ways on the Yuanci mountain back then, he had not seen him again. In recent years he had occasionally heard some news about Dtion. He knew that this fellow had established Dtion and was doing well in the great cosmological realm. He had also obtained many benefits. At that moment, in the sky ahead, Ding Yi was carrying a machete with a ghost head. He was wearing a scarlet cloak and looked like a divine weapon that had descended into the world. He looked majestic. It was unknown who he had a grudge with, but they were actually fighting in the rainbow passageway. Dtion's motley crew couldn't withstand the sheer number of people. Those who were fighting with Dtion only numbered in the thousands, yet they were all surrounded and unable to break free. However, when both sides attacked, there were many accidental injuries. As a result, more people were involved in this battle, and the scene was chaotic. Ding Yi, on the other hand, laughed heartily. He seemed to be very happy with this situation. He slashed with the machete in his hand, and rays of machete light swept down with an imposing aura. Suddenly, Ding Yi stopped and looked in the direction of Yang Kai and the others. When he saw Yang Kai's face clearly, he greeted him happily. "So it's Brother Yang. Brother Yang, how have you been in recent years?" Yang Kai chuckled and said, "Thanks to you, Brother Ding. You seem to be doing well." Ding Yi rubbed his head and said cheerfully, "I'm just SSO." Yang Kai said seriously, "Brother Ding, I want to go forward. Please make it easy for me." "Sure." Ding Yi waved his hand heroically and ordered, "Brothers, make way for Brother Yang." With that order, Dtion and the others opened up a path. Yang Kai nodded at Ding Yi and led Meng Hong and the others, as well as his dozens of subordinates, through the battlefield. Behind them, there were still sounds of fighting and killing. It was likely that the chaos would not stop for a while. In the group, the scabby-headed man had a look of admiration. "Our master still has a lot of face. I heard that Ding Yi is arrogant and unruly. He doesn't give face to anyone. Over the years, no less than 10 heaven-opening realm cultivators have died at Dtion's hands. He's actually so polite to the master." Lang Qingshan said indifferently, "Master's strength is unparalleled. How would Ding Yi dare to stop him?" The scabby-headed man was surprised. "Even a blockhead like you knows how to flatter people?" Lang Qingshan's face turned slightly red, and he said angrily, "I'm just speaking the truth. How is this flattery?" The two of them bickered endlessly, and the path forward did not seem lonely. Behind them, Ding Yi and Dtion were blocking the path, so the path ahead was much emptier. No one knew how long this rainbow path was, and Yang Kai could not see the end of it. The group of people sped forward. Suddenly, a large net enveloped the front. At the same time, a sinister laugh rang out. "This path was opened by me, and this tree was planted by me. If you want to pass through, leave behind your life and wealth." The large net enveloped the entire path, sealing off the sky and locking down the earth. It actually made it impossible for people to avoid it. Everyone's expression changed drastically. Lang Qingshan shouted angrily, "Master, be careful." He stepped out of the group and suddenly threw a punch forward. A ball of light erupted from his fist, and it was like a sun. Scorching power wantonly spread out. Among the group of people who had joined Yang Kai, Lang Qingshan was one of the few with the best aptitude. Back then, when they were being rewarded, he had asked Yang Kai for grade 5 materials. Over the years, he had also refined a few types of grade 5 powers. Compared to before, his strength was incomparable. When this punch was thrown, a mark was branded in the void. The power of the Grand Sun primordial fire lingered around his fist, as if he was lifting a round sun and smashing it down. It was full of momentum. However, in the next moment, he was caught by the large net. It was unknown what material the net was made of, but it was incomparably tough. It was impervious to water and fire. Even his grade 5 Grand Sun primordial fire could not burn it. In the blink of an eye, Lang Qingshan was wrapped in the net. The large net covered the back, and in an instant, everyone was tightly wrapped. A thin figure appeared from the void. He had a sharp mouth, monkey cheeks, and rat eyes. He pinched the goatee on his chin and chuckled. The third batch. A bunch of fools who only know how to search for treasures. Who would have thought that in my eyes, all of you are treasures? It had been more than 10 years since the opening of the great cosmological realm. Any cultivator who was still alive would more or less have some gains. This thin old man was holding a treasure and waiting here to rob the passing cultivators. It was a good plan. With a hand seal, the large net suddenly contracted and tightened around everyone. The faces of Meng Hong and the others changed drastically. They were shocked to find that the power in their bodies could not circulate smoothly and were completely suppressed. Only then did they know that this large net was really extraordinary. No wonder this thin old man dared to do this alone. Let me see what good things you have. The thin old man stepped forward with a wretched smile. However, in the next moment, he suddenly took a step back and looked at the person in the net in horror. He swallowed his saliva and said, "Lord Yang, you recognize me?" In the net, Yang Kai looked at the thin old man indifferently. The old man rolled his eyes and forced a smile. Lord Yang destroyed Thunder Light Sword Pavilion and presided over Crimson Star. This old man has admired you for a long time. Bah, to think you would have such a day, boy. Now that you have fallen into my primordial dragon binding net, don't even think about escaping. Even if you are a dragon, you will have to coil around me. I heard that you destroyed Thunder Light Sword Pavilion's star market, killed tens of thousands of people, and plundered their wealth, right? You've made a fortune. After this old man will no longer have to worry about cultivation resources in the future. Looking at Yang Kai sinisterly, the old man grinned. Boy, if you know what's good for you, quickly throw out your space ring, otherwise, this old man will strangle you right now. Yang Kai said indifferently. The space ring is in my hand. Why don't you come and get it yourself? I've already fallen into your net. What are you afraid of? The thin old man grinned meaningfully. Lord Yang's strength is astonishing. Who knows if you have any other tricks up your sleeve? This old master had better be careful. Throw out your space ring first, and this old master can spare your lives. Lang Qingshan was furious. Shameless old man. What's the point of launching a sneak attack? If you have the guts, let me go and this Lang will fight you. The thin old man looked at Lang Qingshan in disdain. You bastard, there's something wrong with your head. You are a fish on the chopping block. Your life and death are only in this old master's hands. Why should this old master let you go? It's too early to say who is the fish and who is the meat. Since you don't want to come over, this king will. Yang Kai suddenly stood up and walked forward with the net in his hand. The old man's expression changed drastically. He gritted his teeth and said, Lord Yang is indeed impressive. You can still move after being trapped by my primordial dragon binding net. It seems that this old master has underestimated you. But this net's power is not limited to just this little bit. Stop, stop, stop. He shouted stop 6 times in a row, his hands constantly changing signs. The primordial dragon binding net's threads suddenly tightened. Lang Qingshan and the others let out a muffled groan. They felt that the space in the net had become abnormally frozen. Even their thoughts had become stagnant. Yang Kai's footsteps also gradually slowed down. He finally froze on the spot. The old man wiped the cold sweat on his forehead, his heart palpitating as he said, I almost failed miserably. Luckily this old master's treasure is not bad. My treasure is not bad, you can't do it. Yang Kai grinned, his frozen footsteps falling again. The old man was shocked, he jumped back 1,000 feet. How did you? Yang Kai walked as fast as the wind. He approached the old man step by step, his voice cold. This net is indeed not bad. Those who are trapped by it will not be able to circulate their spiritual energy smoothly. But there's a flaw. It can't restrict the power of the body. You're courting death by using this net to deal with me. The skinny old man cried out in alarm. He didn't care about his precious big net anymore. He turned around and fled into the distance. However, he didn't run far before he felt his neck tighten. A big hand grabbed his neck like a tight band and lifted him up like a chicken. The old man instantly froze. He slowly turned his head. Any last words? Yang Kai asked. This is a misunderstanding. The old man smiled in a flattering manner. With a snap, Yang Kai crushed his neck. He broke his neck bone. His head rolled down, the headless corpse twitching nonstop, blood spurting out from the neck like a fountain. The moment the old man died, the primordial dragon binding net loosened. Yang Kai reached out and pulled the net down. Everyone was instantly freed. The power that was restrained also recovered. The group of people stared at him in a daze. Only now did they realize how terrifying the gap between them and the young man in front of them was. Trapped in this net, they didn't even have the strength to lift a finger. But Yang Kai was able to ignore the power of this net and kill its owner. Chapter 4082. Yang Kai casually tossed the mixed origin dragon binding net to Lang Qingshan. The latter was stunned for a moment before he was overjoyed. Thank you, master, for your reward. The others looked on enviously. They had all been bound by this net before, so they naturally knew how powerful this treasure was. They didn't dare say that it could deal with those in the heaven-opening realm, but at the very least, those below the heaven-opening realm would be powerless against this net. With this net in hand, those below the heaven-opening realm could be said to be invincible. However, even though they were envious, they couldn't think of anything else. Previously, when they were in danger, Lang Qingshan was the first to rush out. He was loyal and courageous, so it was natural for him to be rewarded by Yang Kai. Refine it carefully. This net. Be careful. Yang Kai suddenly shouted. When he turned his head to look, he saw a huge spinning all in front of the seven-colored passageway. It pierced through the air and filled his vision. This attack came without warning, and it was the moment when the skinny old man was beheaded. Everyone relaxed. It was obvious that this attack had been planned long ago. The huge all was extremely fast, arriving in front of Yang Kai in the blink of an eye. The expressions of the dozens of people behind him changed drastically. Yang Kai took 3 steps forward and stretched out a large hand. The power of wood, fire, earth and water filled his hand as he grabbed at the huge all. He grabbed empty air. The huge all actually ignored his attack and easily pierced through his body, heading straight for his body. This is... Yang Kai's expression changed slightly. He didn't have time to react before the huge all slammed into his body. His entire body shook violently as blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. His face was pale. Behind him, the dozens of people all let out muffled groans as their auras suddenly withered. Divine technique. Yang Kai suddenly understood. Previously, when he saw the huge all's shocking aura, he thought it was some kind of secret treasure. Only now did he understand that it wasn't a secret treasure at all. It was a divine technique, an extremely sinister divine technique. This divine technique targeted the cultivator's Dao seal. The moment the giant all hit his body, Yang Kai felt the Dao seal in his body shake violently. The wood, fire, earth and water forces in the Dao seal suddenly became chaotic. Fortunately, he had been using a part of his mind to control the Yin-Yang Reversal 5 Elements Profound Universe Heart Sutra. Otherwise, this alone would have been enough to destroy his foundation. It was also thanks to the fact that he had refined quite a bit of Dao-E divine water, that the seal had become incomparably sturdy. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. Yang Kai's face suddenly became gloomy and his figure flickered, disappearing from where he stood. When he reappeared, He was already a few thousand meters away, sending out a punch towards a certain spot in the void, causing it to collapse, but there was no one there. You sure run fast. Yang Kai's expression was unsightly. He had been attacked by the giant owl, and had immediately followed it. However, he hadn't been able to find the person who had attacked him. It was clear that the person who had attacked him was extremely fearful of him, and knew how powerful he was. After this attack, regardless of whether it was a success or failure, he had immediately fled. What annoyed Yang Kai was that he didn't even know who had attacked him. Was this person robbing him like the skinny old man? Or was he deliberately targeting him? His mind was in turmoil. He faintly felt that the latter was more likely. If he was robbing him, he wouldn't have fled immediately after the first attack. However, this person had done so. Obviously, he was deliberately targeting him. However, this person might not be targeting him, but targeting all the bearers chosen by the Holy Spirits. This person was also a bearer. Yang Kai's mind brightened. He had laid an ambush here to eliminate some of his opponents in advance. Master! Lang Qingshan and the others hurriedly chased after him with a guilty look on their faces. They had only followed Yang Kai into the colorful tunnel for less than 5 minutes, and they had already encountered 2 waves of attacks. In the 2 waves of attacks, they were completely useless. In the first wave, Yang Kai had turned the tide and killed the skinny old man. In the second wave, Yang Kai was at the front and took most of the attacks. As his subordinates, Lang Qingshan and the others felt ashamed and uneasy. The giant awl was an attack that targeted the divine technique of Taoist seals. Yang Kai took most of the damage, and the remaining damage was distributed to Lang Qingshan and the others. Although it made their Taoist seals tremble, it didn't take any of their lives. Yang Kai glanced at them, and immediately understood that their current condition was no longer suitable for fighting. He said in a low voice, "Relax, I'll send all of you to a good place." As he said that, he extended his hand to grab them. Lang Qingshan and the others didn't understand what he meant, but they quickly relaxed. When Yang Kai's big hand grabbed them, their vision turned upside down. When they came back to their senses, they realized that they had already arrived at a place with beautiful scenery. They looked at each other in confusion. Just as they were wondering where they were, Yang Kai's voice was heard. "Recuperate carefully, don't think about anything else." His voice was still by their ears, but they couldn't see him. Lang Qingshan and the others nodded respectfully. They quickly sat in a lotus position and silently channeled their secret arts. In the tunnel, Yang Kai spat out a mouthful of blood. He wiped the corner of his mouth and walked forward. The tunnel was very long, but there were corpses lying on the ground at intervals. It was obvious that the cultivator who had entered earlier had already fought. Yang Kai walked past a few corpses on the ground and carefully examined them. There were no wounds on these corpses, and their wealth had not been taken away. Their space rings were still on their hands, and their body temperature was still there. It was obvious that they had just died. He scanned the corpses with his divine telekinesis, and discovered that their Taoist seals had been shattered. The owner of the giant awl had taken action. Yang Kai raised his head and looked in the direction of the tunnel. He activated the law of space and drifted forward, chasing after the owner. The owner of this giant awl was definitely one of the carriers. Perhaps he was already proficient in it, or he had learned this strange attack from a divine spirit. This attack was really hard to guard against. Even Yang Kai was almost hit by it, let alone others. If a cultivator with a weak foundation was hit by this attack, their Taoist seals would be shattered in an instant, and they would die an unnatural death. He wanted to see which bastard had the guts to do this to him. He chased after the owner, passing by batch after batch of cultivator. Suddenly, Yang Kai's eyes lit up, and he arrived next to a woman in a few steps. Before he could greet her, the woman suddenly swung her hair. The red thread that bound her hair turned into countless threads and attacked Yang Kai. "Senior sister, please have mercy," Yang Kai shouted, and the power of the earth system filled the surface of his body, turning into a dragon shield. Each dragon shield was made of a giant dragon's tail, and the dragon scales on the dragon's body were vivid. A red silk wrapped around Yang Kai and was blocked by the dragon shield. The woman turned her head. and her beautiful eyes lit up. Little brother Yang? Senior sister Chu. Yang Kai smiled slightly. This woman was Chu Huashang of Yinyang Wonderland. She entered the colorful passage before Yang Kai, but her speed was not fast. She was caught up by Yang Kai here. We are really fated. Chu Huashang smiled, and the person was more delicate than the flower. The red silk threads were retracted and turned into the headband that bound the long hair. She looked up and down at Yang Kai, and her beautiful eyes were shining. Yang Kai laughed. We are going to enter the land of no elders. We will always meet. Senior sister Chu alone? How many more can there be? Chu Huashang looked at him with a smile. Little brother Yang, do you want to accompany me? If we join forces, even if we meet Lin Feng, we can beat them. Yang Kai smiled and said, It's not impossible, but if we find the primordial fruit tree. Chu Huashang said quietly. Little brother Yang is a big man. Can't you let me, a weak woman? Although the Fei is ugly, his strength is good. I have made an agreement with him. If I can take him out of the great ruins, he will protect me for 400 years. I want the primordial spirit fruit very much. Yang Kai laughed and said, Senior sister Chu is not a weak woman. I am really soft. Chu Huashang said coquettishly, close to Yang Kai's eyes like silk. Little brother Yang, if you don't believe it, you will know. Yang Kai's eyes involuntarily glanced at her towering peaks, clenched his fist and coughed. Senior sister Chu, I haven't found the primordial spirit fruit yet. You take away the charm first. Chu Huashang suddenly smiled and said, You are really interesting. No longer talking about companionship, both she and Yang Kai know that even if they are really companions, they will be hostile in the end. Maybe they will not kill each other, but in order to compete for the primordial spirit fruit, they will definitely go all out. This is not only related to the interests of the Holy Spirit for hundreds of years, but also related to their future status in their respective sections. Just think about it. If they could really bring out a divine spirit from the great cosmological realm, then their status in their respective sects would definitely rise, and those blessed enclaves would definitely nurture them and treat them as core disciples. It was because of this that the Holy Spirits agreed to protect them. If you want the horse to run, you have to let the horse eat. This is a condition that every bearer cannot refuse. Yang Kai has not had time to talk to Zhu Juyin about this, and now that Yu He and others have fallen into the hands of Zhu Juyin, Yang Kai will grab the primordial spirit fruit no matter what. Otherwise, with the character of Zhu Juyin, Yu He and others will definitely die. Senior sister, have you seen anyone running past you? Yang Kai asked. Chu Huashang said, Yes, a lot of people, one by one ran faster than a rabbit. I don't know what to worry about. Yang Kai was speechless as a result. He couldn't track down the whereabouts of the owner of the giant awl. After a little hesitation, Yang Kai said, Senior sister Chu, be careful. I just met a guy who displayed a divine technique, specifically targeting the seal. He told all kinds of information about the giant awl. Chu Huashang's face suddenly became dignified. Isn't this the Tao-breaking seal of Ziqiang blessed land? Yang Kai wondered. Senior sister, do you recognize this divine technique? Chu Huashang nodded. Listening to what you said, it's very much like the Tao-breaking seal of Ziqiang blessed land. This divine technique is specifically targeted at the cultivator's seal, but I haven't seen it with my own eyes. I can't be sure. Suspicious. Did Ziqiang blessed land also come? I haven't heard of it. Yang Kai guessed. Maybe Ziqiang blessed land came. Or there was a disciple of Ziqiang blessed land who became the bearer, and the Holy Spirit behind it learned this divine technique and passed it on to the current bearer. Chu Huashang nodded and said, There is also this possibility. In any case, senior sister, be careful. Chu Huashang covered her mouth and smiled. Thank you, junior brother, for reminding me. But junior brother, rest assured, this divine technique can deal with the general cultivator, but it is a bit difficult to deal with senior sister. Chapter 4083. Chu Huashang condenses the power of the 6th grade and aims to achieve the 6th grade to open the sky. Naturally, she has this confidence. Yang Kai said, Senior sister, you can't take it lightly, and the power of the Tao-breaking seal is really good. He has refined more than a dozen drops of Dao-e divine water. How strong is the seal? And it is shaken by the 5 elements, not to mention other people. Although Chu Huashang's background is good, if you are caught off guard and attacked, it is very likely to suffer a big loss. Chu Huashang kept nodding. Well, I will remember. Seeing her careless appearance, Yang Kai didn't know whether to laugh or cry. However, on second thought, I just suffered a loss because I was unprepared. Chu Huashang and others were born in the blessed enclave, and they are well informed. If they really see the Dao-breaking seal, they will recognize it. It should be okay to be on guard. It's finally the end and it's too long. Chu Huashang suddenly brightened up. Yang Kai looked up and saw a ray of light in front of him. It was obvious that he had reached the end of the passage. When the two talked, they did not stop. Counting the distance, this colorful passage was at least 100 miles. Yang Kai was secretly speechless. Junior brother, be careful. There may be an ambush at this exit. Chu Huashang warned. Yang Kai smiled. I will explore the way for senior sister. As soon as he finished speaking, his figure flashed and rushed out of the exit. Sure enough, as soon as he appeared, countless attacks came from all directions, covering the sky and covering the earth. The number of cultivator gathered at this exit is really a lot. It should be from the same force. There are thousands of people. When they see someone coming out, they will attack without asking. The power of the secret technique is released, and they will cover the whole body of Yang Kai. Yang Kai coldly snorted, using the nihility secret technique, and his body was immediately banished into the void, drifting. Although there were many attacks, they all hit empty air. Many of the cultivator ambushing at the exit were shocked and doubtful, thinking that Yang Kai had been smashed into pieces. But in the next moment, Yang Kai's figure reappeared on the spot. When the flames around his body shone brightly, the golden crow primordial fire turned into little golden crows and scattered in all directions. Screams of agony rang out one after another. One by one, the cultivator was incinerated by the golden crow primordial fire and turned into fine powder at a speed visible to the naked eye. It's Red Star. Someone recognized Yang Kai's identity and shouted in horror. The situation is tense, retreat. Another person shouted. The cultivator that was still alive did not dare to stay any longer. They all scattered like birds and beasts, leaving behind over 200 corpses that were burned to ashes by the golden crow primordial fire. Yang Kai did not intend to pursue. With a shake of his body, the golden crow primordial fire that flew out flew back again and disappeared into his body. Chu Huashang jumped out of the exit, looked around, spit out his tongue and said, "They are really unlucky. It's not good to hit anyone, but they actually provoked junior brother." Yang Kai said lightly, "They are here, but they are just looking for their own death. Even without him, these people will suffer a big loss sooner or later. However, since ancient times, people die for wealth and birds die for food. Junior brother, are you really not with me?" Chu Huashang looked at Yang Kai faintly, looking forward to it. Yang Kai turned and waved and said, "Goodbye here. I wish senior sister Chu good luck." Smelly man. Chu Huashang's mouth pouted high, her breasts rose and fell, but soon she smiled again and said, "Junior brother has to leave the great void realm alive. Senior sister will find you to try yin-yang fusion when she is free." Yang Kai staggered and almost fell to the ground, and Chu Huashang's bell-like laughter came from behind. The great void realm is ancient, and the land of elders is even older. The entire land of elders is filled with the vicissitudes of life. This strange place seems to have been preserved from a very long time ago. The laws of heaven and earth are also subtly different from those of the great void realm. There are traces of ancient times. The world energy here was extremely rich. Every time Kai Yang breathed, he could feel the world energy seeping into his body through his pores, making his whole body feel comfortable. Cultivating in this kind of place would definitely result in twice the result with half the effort. Even if he was injured, healing would still be faster than normal. 200,000 people have poured into this land of elders. Even if there are many losses in the passage, there are only tens of thousands of people. More than 100,000 cultivator have gathered here. If there is really something good in the land of elders, It will not escape the search of these cultivators. After coming out of the exit, Yang Kai casually found a direction and galloped away. Battles between cultivator can be seen everywhere on the road, or for a spirit medicine, or for a treasure of heaven and earth. The fire of life extinguished and blood stained the earth. Yang Kai has a huge harvest in the Great Void Realm, and his vision is also high. It is really difficult for ordinary treasures to move him. The main goal of this trip is the primordial spirit fruit. If there are other gains, it is naturally the best. As they move forward, the cultivator also gradually spread out. This land of elders is unknown how big it is. There is no sun or moon in the sky, but there is light. Looking up, there are huge stars hanging in the sky. These stars seem to be in front of people, giving people a strange sense of oppression. Along the way, Yang Kai also occasionally harvests. He picked a few spirit medicines and threw them into the medicine garden, letting Mu Zhu and the little wood spirit take care of them. He also harvested a few treasures of yin and yang, but the quality is not too high. 3 days later, Yang Kai, who was galloping, suddenly stopped. His nose twitched slightly, and his eyes lit up. He smelled a strange fragrance. When this fragrance entered his nose, he could not help but clear his mind and eliminate distracting thoughts. There was a strange resonance in his Tao seal, and the power of the 5 elements flowed faster. His heart trembled, and he realized that this fragrance should be from a great medicine. He did not know what it is, but its effect must be extraordinary. Yang Kai's spirit was greatly boosted. He followed the fragrance all the way. Not long after, he suddenly entered a valley. The valley was full of birds and fragrant flowers, and the scenery was pleasant. However, at this moment, there are 3 groups of people confronting each other. There are many of them, and each group has more than 100 people. They are gathered in the center of the valley, and they are wary of each other and sizing each other up. These 3 groups of people are obviously like Yang Kai. They smelled the scent of the great medicine and followed the fragrance, but they are in a deadlock here. Seeing Yang Kai's figure, the faces of the leaders of the 3 groups of people sank. The longer they delay, the more people will come here. If someone they can't afford to offend really comes, they will definitely not have a share of this great medicine. The leader of the group on the left is a strong man. He snorted coldly, another one courting death. The leader of the woman on the right said, "We can't delay any longer. Quickly come up with a plan. If we delay any longer, more people will come." The leader of the last group of cultivators is an elderly man. He reached out to stroke his beard and said, "Old madam has many people, so she wants half. You can divide the remaining half." The strong man and the woman sneered. Wishful thinking. The woman licked her lips and looked at the strong man. "Why don't you and I join forces to kill this old thing first? Then we can split the profits. Wouldn't that be perfect?" When the strong man heard this, his expression changed slightly. He nodded and said, "Okay." The old man's face turned cold. "Want to kill me? That will depend on whether you have the ability." He raised his arm and shouted, "Children, follow me to snatch the medicine." As soon as he finished speaking, he took the lead and rushed to the location of the great medicine. When the strong man and the beautiful woman saw this, they couldn't care less and ordered their subordinates to rush over together. They were in a stalemate before and were afraid of each other. Now that one side made a move, the other 2 sides couldn't hold back and could only fight for it. Yang Kai looked up and saw a vine-like thing in the middle of the valley. There was a bunch of grape-like berries on the vine. The grapes were green and purple, and the tempting fragrance came from the grapes. Yang Kai couldn't help but have a strange expression. What kind of great medicine was this? He didn't know much about the rare treasures outside of the universe, so he really couldn't tell what this thing was. However, at this moment, he didn't have time to think too much. The 3 groups of people were about to attack. If he wasn't careful, this great medicine would be destroyed. Just as Yang Kai was about to make a move to snatch it, he saw that around the vine, pom-poms floated out and danced with the wind. Around the great medicine, there were dandelion-like plants that bore many pom-poms. When hundreds of people attacked, these pom-poms were immediately hit. The pom-poms separated and turned into pieces of flower velvet, falling on the cultivators. No one cared about these flower velvet. However, a hair-raising scene appeared. The flower velvet looked unremarkable, and no cultivator paid attention to it. However, when these flower velvet landed on the cultivator, it seemed to have a life of its own and madly pierced into the cultivator's flesh. Miserable screams instantly sounded. One by one, the cultivator fell to the ground. The flower velvet rapidly grew like monsters, sucking the essence of the cultivator's flesh and blood. In less than 10 breaths, the life force of the cultivator was extinguished, turning into withered corpses that fell to the ground with a ferocious expression. The 3 leaders' strength was not bad. When they sensed that something was wrong, they immediately activated their strength to resist. However, the woman and the elderly man only lasted for a moment before following in the footsteps of their subordinates. The brawny man was decisive. He raised his hand and chopped off his arm. As blood spurted out, he retreated in horror. Looking at his arm, he saw that his arm was rapidly withering. The essence of his flesh and blood was sucked clean by the parasitic flower velvet. The flower velvet fluttered in the air, drifting towards the brawny man, as if it had a mind of its own. The brawny man's expression changed greatly. He did not dare to stay any longer. With a strange cry, he fled outside. Yang Kai was dumbfounded. He did not pay attention to the dandelions before. It could even be said that he did not notice these things at all. All his attention was attracted by the great medicine. Who knew that there would be such danger around the great medicine? Hundreds of people died in 10 breaths. How horrifying was the scene! The flower velvet seemed to be able to sense life force, and continued to drift towards Yang Kai. Yang Kai stood still. When the flower velvet came close, he raised his hand and pointed. A small and delicate golden crow flew out from his fingertip, and faced the flower velvet that filled the sky. With a whoosh, the sky was set ablaze. All the flower velvet was burned to ashes in an extremely short period of time. The scene was cleared. Chapter 4084. It was unknown what kind of strange existence these flowers were, but they were extremely dangerous. Once a cultivator came into contact with them, they would pierce into their flesh and blood, and devour their flesh and blood essence in a very short time, turning them into dry bones. But how overbearing was the golden crow true fire? These flowers were simply unable to resist. The people from the 3 sides either died or fled. Soon, only Yang Kai was left in the mountain valley. Stepping forward, he stepped into the world of dandelions. The flower balls disintegrated, and the flowers danced once again. Yang Kai's body surged with raging flames, burning a passage, and soon arrived in front of the great medicine. Leaning over and smelling it, he could not help but feel refreshed by the pleasant fragrance. Good stuff, Yang Kai praised. Although he did not know the specific effects of this great medicine, it was undeniable that this was definitely one of the few spirit medicines he had ever seen. He reached out to grab the bunch of grape-like berries, preparing to pluck them. At this moment, a sudden change occurred. With a slight sizzling sound, roots suddenly pierced out from the ground and quickly wrapped around Yang Kai, pulling him down. With a bang, Yang Kai's entire body disappeared as he was pulled deep into the ground. After 3 breaths, Yang Kai broke out of the ground furious. In a moment of carelessness, he was actually plotted against by a stalk of great medicine. Those roots that had wrapped around him just now were clearly the work of this vine. Although the strength of those roots was great, they couldn't restrain his eruption, allowing him to quickly break free. Gritting his teeth, he sneered. I didn't want to kill you, but unfortunately, you've gone too far. He reached out to grab the vine. His original plan was to take the bunch of grape-like berries. The essence of this great medicine was on this bunch of berries. But after suffering a loss, he immediately changed his mind and wanted to move the entire vine. Unexpectedly, before he could grab the vine suddenly shook, pulling out roots from the ground, and a few buds grew on the vine. In an instant, the vine seemed to have grown hands and feet, and then fled into the distance like a wisp of smoke. Yang Kai was stunned. He stared blankly at the fleeing great medicine, absent-minded on the spot. This great medicine had gained sentience. Yang Kai was pleasantly surprised. Previously, when he was plotted against by the vines, he already felt that this great medicine was somewhat unusual. Now it seemed that it was indeed so. This spirit medicine had lived in the land of everlastingness for an unknown number of years, absorbing the essence of heaven and earth, and had actually developed spiritual intelligence. It had an instinctive perception, and knew how to seek fortune and avoid disaster. When it sensed that something was wrong, it actually took the initiative to escape. Such a great medicine definitely had extraordinary medicinal effects. Even in the entire trichiliocosm, there were probably not many of them. Overjoyed, he arrived in front of the vine in a flash and smiled. "Where can you escape to in front of me? Be a good boy and let yourself be captured." The giant hand descended, binding space. The vines waved their branches and cut through space, entangling Yang Kai's limbs. The arm-like branches turned into a fist and punched towards Yang Kai's face. Yang Kai was shocked again. While he was shocked, he was punched in the nose by the vine. Suddenly he saw stars. Taking advantage of this time, the vine once again broke free from Yang Kai's entanglement and continued to escape. Yang Kai covered his nose, tears streaming down his face. Enraged, he raised his hand and threw the black dragon spear forward. The spear pierced through the air like a giant dragon dancing in the sky. The black dragon spear accurately pierced the front of the vine, filling the air with the might of a dragon, causing heaven and earth to tremble. The vines stopped in their tracks and shivered. Yang Kai's breathing was heavy. He approached step by step from behind, rubbing his nose as he walked. With a plop, the vine's roots softened and it knelt on the ground, transforming into a small person half a foot tall. It had hands and feet, 7 orifices on its face, and a bunch of grape-like berries on its head. Seeing Yang Kai approaching, it raised its hand and plucked a purple grape from its head. Holding it with both hands, it spoke in human language. "Master, please spare my life. This lowly one is willing to offer a berry. Please give me a way out." Yang Kai couldn't care less about rubbing his nose. He stared at it and said in surprise, You can transform?" This great medicine really became a spirit. It had already transformed into a human form, looking like a little old man. It was unknown how long the flowing time great emperor had lived. All things had spirits. If they had the opportunity, they would be able to open their spiritual wisdom. In this world, not only the existence of flesh and blood could be like this. The jade and stone, and the spirit in medicine could all be like this. However, without flesh and blood, it was extremely difficult for this kind of existence to cultivate. It often required the accumulation of the endless flowing time great emperor. The great medicine in front of him had spiritual wisdom, could transform into a human form, and could even speak human language. It probably had tens of thousands of years of cultivation. Such a great medicine could be called a sacred medicine. The half-foot-tall little old man looked up and smiled very flatteringly. Suddenly, he stretched out a leg and swept it towards Yang Kai's lower body, directly throwing Yang Kai to the ground. He then laughed and ran away. "Even if you're as cunning as a ghost, you still have to drink Master Pu's foot-washing water." Yang Kai flipped over and stood up, raising his hand to grab the black dragon spear. His face was as black as the bottom of a pot. He muttered, "I'll kill you, I'll definitely kill you, I'll eat you clean." A moment later, with a thud, the half-foot-tall little old man kneeled on the ground. His facial features were squeezed together. He held a grape that he plucked from his head and said pitifully, "Master, please spare my life. This lowly one won't dare to do it again." Yang Kai sneered and grabbed him. He clenched his fist and pressed it against his forehead. He used all his strength to drill and said, "Tell me, how do you want to die?" The little old man's face was twisted and he begged for mercy. "Master, don't drill anymore. My head is going to break. It's quite comfortable." 2 roots scratched his face. His facial features relaxed, and he looked very comfortable. Yang Kai was angry. He stretched out his hand and released a ball of golden crow true fire, slowly approaching him. The little old man's face twisted again. He struggled to escape from Yang Kai's hands and kept shaking his head. No, I'll be burned to death." "Burned to death and end all troubles. It'll be a good time to cook a pot of medicine. Drinking it will definitely prolong your life and increase your strength." Yang Kai's face was ferocious and terrifying. I'm poisonous, you can't eat me. If you eat me, you'll be poisoned to death. The little old man shouted in fear. Seeing that Yang Kai was indifferent, he quickly used his trump card. Don't kill me. I can take you to find other medicines, they're more delicious. Yang Kai's hands paused. Other medicines? An existence like you? The little old man shook his head. There are a few like me. Some of the little ones haven't fully matured, but eating them will definitely be useful. The little ones he mentioned should be the ones that haven't evolved yet. But even if they haven't, they should have matured for a long time. If they were discovered by the cultivator that entered this place, there would definitely be a fight over them. Do you know of a fruit tree that bears a kind of spiritual fruit? One can only pick one at a time, and it will disappear. Yang Kai asked. He was just worried about where to find the innate fruit tree. He didn't expect to come across such a strange saint herb. It was just the right time to inquire about it. You mean that fruit tree? The little old man thought for a moment. I know, that old thing is even older than me. It's not easy to deal with it. Yang Kai was overjoyed. Take me there, and I'll spare your life. The little old man was also overjoyed, his eyes lit up. Really? Suddenly, he looked at Yang Kai suspiciously. Swear. Yang Kai raised his fist and punched the little old man's head. Your life and death is in my hands, and you still want me to swear? The little old man touched the big bump on his head, feeling wronged. That berry just now. Yang Kai looked at the little old man's head. The little old man reluctantly handed the berry over with both hands. It's here. Yang Kai took it and looked at it carefully. He found that this thing was similar to a grape, but the spiritual energy contained in it was extremely shocking. If such a berry was eaten, not only would it have a restorative effect, it would also have healing effects. He stuffed the berry into his mouth and bit through the skin. He felt an extremely pure spiritual energy exploding in his mouth, as if a small universe had exploded in his mouth. Yang Kai quickly closed his mouth and nose, but there was still uncontrollable spiritual energy flowing out from his 7 orifices, filling the area around him with spiritual energy. The little old man looked at him from the side. His facial features were squeezed together, and he sighed. From now on, I, Pu Baixiong, will change my name to Pu 99 Xiong. There were exactly 100 berries on the string on his head, so he called himself Pu Baixiong. Now that Yang Kai had eaten one, there were only 99 left. After a long time, Yang Kai let out a light breath. He felt an inexhaustible strength in his body. His flesh and blood were wriggling endlessly, and his essence blood was flowing in his body, emitting the sound of a surging river. Pu Baixiong's berry was indeed extraordinary, although it couldn't bring a dead person back to life. As long as there was still a breath left, this berry could bring the dead back to life. Yang Kai turned his head to look at Pu Baixiong, and found him much more pleasing to the eye. Don't try anything funny. If you dare run away again, I'll definitely eat you when I catch you, Yang Kai fiercely threatened. Pu Baixiong nodded repeatedly. I won't run away. I won't run away, I can't escape. Take me to that fruit tree, Yang Kai ordered. Pu Baixiong leaped up and sat on Yang Kai's shoulder, showing him the way. Pu Baixiong was the local dragon of the land of ancients. He had lived here for a long time, the flowing time great emperor, so he knew a lot about the land of ancients. Moreover, he had already transformed into human form, and had been running around the land of ancients for many years. So with his guidance, Yang Kai was saved a lot of trouble. Along the way, Yang Kai avoided many dangers. Under Pu Baixiong's guidance, Yang Kai also obtained many precious treasures. But he didn't come across a saint herb like Pu Baixiong. According to Pu Baixiong, in the entire land of ancients, there were less than 10 saint herbs that could transform into human form like him. And each one of them was as cunning as a ghost, very difficult to capture. The reason he failed miserably was mainly because he didn't expect Yang Kai to be able to ignore the threat of the dandelion flowers. By the time he wanted to escape, it was already too late. A few days later, Yang Kai arrived at a swamp. Pu Baixiong's expression was solemn. Master, this place is very dangerous. You must be careful, don't fall. If you do, both of us will die here. Chapter 4085. Where's the danger? Yang Kai scanned the area with his spiritual sense and found nothing out of the ordinary. He could not help but be surprised. Pu Baixiong said seriously, "This water is poisonous, and there's something underwater." Poisonous water? Yang Kai's expression turned serious. Before entering, Zhu Jiuyin had told him that there were many opportunities and dangers in this elder's land. So he had to be careful. Yang Kai was the carrier she had chosen, so she naturally did not want him to fail. This swamp looked inconspicuous, but it was full of danger. Yang Kai could not help but sigh. At this moment, a few miles away, a group of people looked over in surprise. One of the young men said, "What's that on that person's shoulder?" No one knew which faction this group of people were from. When they came here and saw Pu Baixiong, they were all surprised. A middle-aged man mustered all his strength and looked over. His expression was suddenly shocked, and he exclaimed in joy, "A transformed sacred medicine." As soon as he said that, everyone's breathing quickened. Although they had some gains after entering the elder's land, compared to a transformed Saint Herb, those gains were simply negligible. This sacred medicine had a string of purple and green berries on its head. It had 7 orifices on its face, and it had hands and legs. It was unknown how long it had been there. Such a treasure was rarely seen in the outside world. Now that they saw it, everyone was naturally greedy. Exchanging a glance with each other, they all flew up and rushed towards Yang Kai. Pu Baixiong's roots danced as he scratched his face. He said disdainfully, "Reckless." As soon as he said that, there was a series of screams. The cultivator that was flying in mid-air fell from the sky uncontrollably. Plopping sounds rang out incessantly as many cultivators fell into the puddles of the swamp, inexplicably surprised. However, before they could climb out of the puddles, they suddenly began to scream miserably. Flesh and blood separated. In the blink of an eye, the cultivator that fell into the puddles turned into white bones and sank to the bottom of the water and disappeared. The remaining cultivator was luckier. They did not fall into the puddles directly. They stood on top of the swamp and felt their hair stand on end. They did not dare to move. "This water is really poisonous." Yang Kai's heart trembled. Those cultivators had entered the great cosmological realm for more than 10 years, and each of them had grown tremendously in strength. Although they had not succeeded in splitting open the sky, they had at least condensed several kinds of yin, yang, and 5 elements power. They were all outstanding figures in the emperor realm. However, such a group of cultivators had turned into withered bones without even having the strength to resist when they fell into the puddle. This showed how toxic the swamp water was. If that was all, it would be fine. However, there seemed to be a natural restriction above the swamp that prevented people from flying. "Don't move, don't move. Be careful of these puddles, don't fall in," the elderly man shouted. As soon as his voice fell, a pitch-black tentacle suddenly stretched out from a puddle under his feet, rolled him up, and dragged him into the puddle. With a gurgling sound and a burst of bubbles, the old man disappeared. What was that? Yang Kai's scalp was a little numb. He did not see clearly what had dragged the elderly man into the swamp just now. He only vaguely saw that it was a tentacle with form, but without substance. Pu Baixiong whispered, "I'm not too sure. I only know that there is something under the water. However, if you don't make a sound, that thing won't be able to sense you." Yang Kai nodded slightly. The death of the elderly man made the cultivator who was still alive feel uneasy. Many of them screamed and quickly fled out of the swamp. It was fine if they did not move, but once they moved, pitch-black tentacles suddenly burst out from the puddles of the swamp, rolled them up by the waist, and dragged them into the puddles. One by one, the cultivator disappeared quickly. Huge bubbles emerged from the puddles one after another. The power of secret techniques and artifacts bloomed. Many of the cultivator resisted and cut off the tentacles. However, there were so many tentacles that no matter how hard they tried, they could not cut them all. In just a dozen breaths, the original team of more than 100 people was reduced to a dozen people. These people stood in the swamp trembling in fear, unable to advance or retreat. They were lucky. They did not move or make any noise, so they were lucky to survive. Seeing their companions fall one after another, they did not dare to move. Yang Kai clicked his tongue and asked, Can we take a detour? This swamp was strange, and it made him a little scared. Pu Baixiong said, "It will take a long time to take a detour. Don't worry, with me leading the way, we will definitely be able to get there safely." Yang Kai was skeptical, but he still braced himself and stepped forward. Pu Baixiong whispered in his ear, "Don't make any noise, otherwise it will be troublesome. Also, don't touch the poisonous water, otherwise it will be even more troublesome." "You're so long-winded," Yang Kai said with disdain. "Being long-winded is for your own good. I don't want to die here with you." Pu Baixiong said angrily. This time, his voice was a little loud, and a tentacle immediately stretched out from the puddles of the swamp. Pu Baixiong immediately stopped talking, and Yang Kai also froze in place, not daring to move. The tentacle stopped 3 inches in front of Yang Kai, swayed for a while, and then retracted back. Yang Kai exhaled a mouthful of turbid air, and continued to move forward. The dozen cultivator who were lucky enough to survive watched for a while, and then followed suit, carefully walking in the swamp. After walking for a while, Pu Baixiong suddenly exclaimed in surprise, "Why is there an eye in the water?" Yang Kai was shocked and looked down. Sure enough, he saw that there was an extra eye in the puddles beside him. Rather than saying that there was an extra eye, it was more accurate to say that the puddles had turned into a giant eye, and it was following his footsteps, moving its eyeballs and quietly watching him. Yang Kai could not help but feel a chill run down his spine, and his body froze in place. "Grape, you didn't know that there were eyes in the water before?" Pu Baixiong swallowed his saliva, and said bitterly, "I've never seen it before. What the hell is this place? It's one thing for the sacred medicine to become a spirit, but why does this swamp seem to have become a spirit as well?" Yang Kai's forehead was covered in cold sweat. "Don't scare yourself." Pu Baixiong forced a laugh. "We must have seen wrongly. Close your eyes and look again, and it will be gone." As he said that, he closed his eyes, and then slowly opened them, and said in horror, "There are more eyes." The moment he closed his eyes, all the puddles in the swamp turned into giant eyes, and the eyelids rolled, staring at Yang Kai and the dozen cultivator. The dozen cultivator obviously noticed this as well, and they were instantly scared out of their wits, and some of the more cowardly ones had already started running. As he moved, the entire swamp shook, and from the giant eyes, countless tentacles stretched out in all directions, locking down the heavens and earth. "Run!" Yang Kai shouted, and his body swayed, and he quickly ran away. Countless tentacles wrapped around him, and Pu Baixiong grabbed Yang Kai's ears with both hands, and shouted in horror, Die, I'm dead for sure." Just as the tentacles were about to wrap around Yang Kai, there was a whoosh, and a layer of fire burned on the surface of Yang Kai's body, and the approaching tentacles were all burned to ashes. Pu Baixiong was burnt to a crisp, and his head was on fire, and he said pitifully, "Master, why are you burning me? I'm going to be burnt to a crisp." "Shut up," Yang Kai shouted angrily. He had already tried his best to protect Pu Baixiong, or else, under the Golden Crow True Fire, how could this saint herb still be alive? The tentacles sizzled as they were burned, and the Golden Crow True Fire was extraordinarily powerful, burning through the tentacles and into the puddles, and the giant eyes in the puddles burst open. An earth-shattering roar came from the depths of the swamp, followed by a series of quakes, and from the bottom of the swamp, a colossal creature slowly crawled up. The colossal creature was 1,000 feet tall, and its entire body was covered in eyes. Layers and layers of dried bones hung on its body, and it was unknown how many dead souls it had gathered. The eyes were of different sizes, and at first glance, they looked like puddles, and from those eyes, pitch-black tentacles extended and danced, grabbing at Yang Kai. There was not only one of these colossal creatures, but more than 100 of them, and at this moment, they were all alarmed. Yang Kai turned around to look, and was instantly shocked. Only now did he realize that the entire swamp was formed by these colossal creatures, and the puddles were their eyes. What the hell was this? Yang Kai had traveled extensively these past few years, and could be considered to have seen a lot, but he had never seen such a creature before. Perhaps only a place like the land of the ancients could give birth to such a strange existence. Fire Dragon's Breath. Yang Kai took a deep breath, and his whole body seemed to expand, and then he fiercely breathed out a mouthful of flames. The golden crow true fire burned the sky red, and the tentacles that extended over were burned to ashes. But the hundreds of tentacles of these colossal creatures were too many, and it was impossible to burn all of them. After Yang Kai finished breathing out the golden crow true fire, the situation did not change much, and the colossal creatures behind him stomped on the ground, chasing closely. Pu Baixiong shouted loudly, "Master, run quickly, after a certain distance they won't chase anymore." Yang Kai ran as fast as he could, running for more than 1,000 li, but he still could not shake them off. He angrily shouted, "Didn't you say they would stop chasing after a certain distance? Why are they still following me?" Pu Baixiong was a little embarrassed. "I didn't know they were so difficult to deal with. I've never seen them before." Yang Kai coldly snorted, "Dragon transformation." With a dragon's roar, Yang Kai's body suddenly expanded, and with a series of crackling sounds, his whole body was covered in dragon scales, each of which had a natural pattern on them. They were solid and thick, and were impervious to fire and water. A pair of horns grew on his head, his hands turned into dragon claws, and his dragon tail swept behind him, while his dragon whiskers fluttered. Dragon's might filled the air. Pu Baixiong was stunned. Yang Kai was also stunned. He had not used the dragon transformation secret technique for a long time, and all these years, he had been consuming dragon blood pills to purify his bloodline. Although he knew he would definitely grow, he did not expect the growth to be so great. At this time, his dragon transformation body was already more than 1,500 zhang tall. And not only that, the characteristics of the dragon race had become more obvious. If in the past his dragon transformation only had a few characteristics of the dragon race, then now 30% to 40% of his body was that of the dragon race. Chapter 4086. The giant creatures with eyes all over their bodies were incomparably huge, but Yang Kai was much taller than them. 2 streams of dragon breath shot out from his nostrils, leaving a mark in the air. Yang Kai stared at the giant creatures that were rapidly approaching him, only to feel a boundless power surging within his body. He roared towards the sky, but what came out of his mouth was a pure dragon roar, shaking the 9 heavens. Raising his hand, he grasped the black dragon spear in his hand. This divine spear was refined from the body of a dragon race, and only those with the bloodline of the dragon race could use its power. If not for this, the giant god Ada would not have given the black dragon spear to Yang Kai. With the spear in hand, the blood in Yang Kai's body flowed even more fiercely, and a strange feeling rose from his heart. It was as if he was not holding a divine spear, but a companion who could share his joys and sorrows, a companion who could go through fire and water with him. Wung. The black dragon spear trembled, and a huge black dragon phantom appeared on the spear, its majestic body filled with endless dragon might, and a pair of dragon eyes glanced at Yang Kai, filled with gratification, relief, and approval. The phantom merged into the spear and disappeared. One of the giant creatures had already arrived 100 zhang in front of Yang Kai. Yang Kai stabbed out with his spear, and the huge dragon body did not retreat, but instead rushed forward to meet the giant creatures. After painstakingly cultivating for several years, the great freedom spear that had fused with thousands of spear techniques finally shone at this moment. Before the battle with the mantis head, Yang Kai had only used the black dragon spear by relying on his own instincts, but now he was no longer the same as before. With the spear in his hand, he could command it as if it was his own arm, and spear images bloomed, filling the air with spear shadows. Not restricted by movement, not restricted by appearance, the spear was free, and his heart was free. This was the great freedom spear. Brushing past the first giant creature, the giant creature suddenly stiffened, and in the blink of an eye, it was hit by dozens of spear strikes, and a moment later, it disintegrated and burst apart. Then the second, the third, wherever Yang Kai passed, there was a rain of blood, and the giant creatures with eyes all over their bodies were unable to withstand a single blow. and the sound of them bursting apart could be heard. Boom! Yang Kai's dragon claws latched onto the head of the last giant creature and slammed it into the ground. A huge crater immediately appeared on the ground. The dragon clenched its claws tightly, and with a puff, the giant creature's head exploded. In less than half a cup of tea's time, he had slaughtered hundreds of giant creatures. Yang Kai slowly straightened his body and stabbed his spear into the ground, quietly experiencing his tyrannical strength at the moment. A wonderful feeling flowed through every inch of his flesh and blood. This sudden increase in strength made him somewhat infatuated. Pu Baixiong's trembling voice rang in his ears. "Master, they're not dead." Yang Kai suddenly turned his head. What he saw made his dragon eyes widen. On the battlefield that stretched for dozens of miles behind him, the giant creatures that had exploded had now turned into pieces of wriggling flesh and blood. Like mercury, they moved closer to each other and fused together. The giant creatures that had been killed at the beginning had already fused with more than half of their bodies, and there were faint signs that they were about to revive. Yang Kai's eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Are these things so difficult to kill? Even the Azure Dragon Spear could not do anything to them. If he wanted to kill them completely, he would probably have to use his Golden Crow True Fire to burn them to ashes. However, with so many giant creatures, using his Golden Crow True Fire to burn them all would be a thankless task. Yang Kai gritted his teeth and withdrew his dragon transformation secret technique. He returned to his original form, grabbed Pu Baixiong, and threw him directly into the sealed world bead. His figure flickered, and he disappeared in an instant. In this great void realm, he did not dare to use his teleportation secret technique at will. After all, the situation here was strange, and there were many barriers between the heavens and earth. Once he used teleportation, he might fall into some unknown danger. If it was an ordinary danger, it would be fine, but if he fell into a natural spirit array, he might be trapped inside forever. It was because of this that he did not use teleportation to escape when he was being chased by those giant creatures. But now he had no choice. Those giant creatures had tenacious vitality, and when they recovered, they would definitely be chased endlessly. Just after Yang Kai left, those giant creatures merged and stood up again a moment later. There was not a single wound on their bodies. Without a target, they stood in place and roared. After a while, they crawled down, and the place where they stood turned into a swamp full of puddles. After a long time, a group of cultivators flew over the swamp and fell uncontrollably into the puddles, turning into skeletons. At the same time, Yang Kai stood in a fog with a pale face, his divine sense fluctuating as he vigilantly scanned his surroundings. He cursed in his heart. He knew that using teleportation in this damned place was definitely not a good thing. Sure enough, his prophecy came true. This fog flowed around his body like water, giving off an extremely strange feeling. Yang Kai used his full eyesight, but he could not see too far away. Not only that, but his divine sense was also suppressed to within 10 meters of him. Yang Kai could not help but feel a chill run down his spine. His divine sense was extremely powerful, not inferior to that of an ordinary heaven-opening realm master. But it was still suppressed by this fog. This was a dangerous place, so he could not stay for long. Just as he was about to use teleportation to leave, he suddenly heard the sound of footsteps approaching. Yang Kai turned his head and shouted, "Who is it?" The footsteps paused, followed by a weak voice, "Brother Yang?" Yang Kai was startled when he heard this, but he soon reacted. "Junior Sister Gu?" This voice belonged to Langya Blessed Land's Gu Pan. Overjoyed, he rushed over and sure enough, after walking a short distance, he saw a beautiful figure standing there. Looking at each other, both of them were overjoyed. "Junior Sister Gu, why are you here?" Yang Kai asked. "I came to find you." Gu Pan looked at him. Yang Kai was confused. "Find me? How did you know I was here?" A strange thought emerged in his mind. He had suddenly teleported here to escape the pursuit of those eye monsters. So why would Gu Pan come here specifically to find him? Gu Pan smiled but did not answer. Yang Kai frowned slightly, vaguely feeling that something was wrong, but he could not tell what it was, so he asked, "Junior Sister, How long have you been here? Do you know how to leave? Gu Pan said. I just came in, so I don't know how to leave. Yang Kai nodded. In that case, let's go together. Junior sister, don't stray too far from me. Oh. Gu Pan nodded obediently. The two set off side by side, walking through the fog, looking for a way out. After walking for some distance, Yang Kai could not help but ask. Junior sister, is there a woman named Zhang Ruoxi in your Langya-blessed land? She only came here a few years ago. Gu Pan shook her head and said, I haven't heard of her. Yang Kai's expression darkened when he heard this. Zhang Ruoxi would definitely go to Langya-blessed land. After all, her ancestor was born there. Her going to Langya-blessed land could be considered an acknowledgement of her ancestors. But he did not know if she had not arrived yet, or if Gu Pan really had not heard of her. Rustling sounds came from beside him again, as Gu Pan buried herself in busying herself. Yang Kai laughed. Junior sister is eating dried fish again? Turning his head to look, Yang Kai's smile suddenly froze on his face, and he shouted, What kind of monster is this? Gu Pan's head had turned into a fish head. Although she still had a human body, it looked extremely strange. The fish head turned to look at him. Sir, I am Ruoxi. While speaking, the fish head turned into Zhang Ruoxi's appearance and looked at him fixedly. Reuniting after such a long time, she was filled with endless joy. Ruoxi. Yang Kai was stunned. Wasn't that Gu Pan beside him? How did it suddenly become Zhang Ruoxi? Husband, how many flowers did you pick and how many blades of grass did you provoke outside? Zhang Ruoxi opened her mouth, her voice overlapping as if several people were speaking at the same time. Her appearance was constantly changing, turning into Shanqing Luo, Xiaoning Chang, Su Yan Shuiyu, Yu Rumeng, and the others. Yang Kai was furious. An illusion? Touching his left eye, he shouted in a low voice. Demon Eye of Annihilation, see through illusions. His left eye immediately turned into a golden vertical slit, faintly emitting a divine light. The constantly changing people in front of him immediately disappeared, and was replaced by a broken branch. What shocked Yang Kai even more was that he had unknowingly grabbed this branch in his hand. In other words, he had been talking to a branch, and he had been talking with relish. What a powerful illusion! Even he didn't realize that he had been tricked. Sweeping it with his divine sense, Yang Kai found that the branch in his hand was nothing more than an ordinary object. Coldly snorting, he threw it away and turned his head to look around. He didn't know if this illusion was activated by someone, or if it was natural. If it was the former, there must be a powerful master here. If it was the latter, Yang Kai estimated that he had fallen into a natural illusion array. That would be a bit troublesome. Inside this illusion array, his teleportation might not be able to play a role. With a thought, Yang Kai immediately urged his space principles, and his figure disappeared. When he reappeared, Yang Kai's face was gloomy. He was still in a fog. In other words, he had most likely fallen into a natural illusion array. Unless he broke this array, he would not be able to leave. Quietly looking around, Yang Kai couldn't find the slightest clue. Even the demon eye of annihilation, which was known to see through illusions, was powerless. Releasing his divine sense, Yang Kai brought Pu Baixiong out of the small sealed world bead and asked, Grape, do you recognize this place? Pu Baixiong looked surprised. He had been thrown into the small sealed world bead by Yang Kai, and now he was released. The scene had changed so quickly that he was a little confused, but after looking around he smiled and said, Master, you're lost. Yang Kai said with a black face, This fog has an illusion effect, it's really powerful. Your master was careless and fell into it. Pu Baixiong stood on Yang Kai's shoulder and said proudly, Master, you may not know, but this is not an ordinary fog. This is the effect of that mushroom. Unless we are saint medicines born from the same root, ordinary people really can't resist it. Mushroom? Yang Kai was dumbfounded. And this is the little mushroom's territory. Yang Kai's brow rose. The little mushroom you speak of, is it also a saint medicine? Pu Baixiong said, Exactly. Chapter 4087. Yang Kai was overjoyed. Can you find its main body? He had heard from Pu Baixiong that there were several sacred herbs in the Great Void Realm that had taken human form like him. Yang Kai was also very interested in those sacred herbs, but he did not expect to suddenly break into the territory of a sacred herb. And according to Pu Baixiong, this fog was actually the sacred herb's doing. Such a method was strange and unpredictable, truly extraordinary. He did not know what the little mushroom Pu Baixiong spoke of was to have such a strange ability. What's so difficult about that? Pu Baixiong shook his head. I often come here to visit her. Master, follow me, I'll take you to her. With a leap, he jumped to the ground and rushed forward, rushing into the fog in a few steps and disappearing. Looking back, he laughed loudly. Brat, if you didn't enter this place, Uncle Pu really wouldn't have been able to do anything to you. You just had to recklessly enter this place. Now you're in for it. He was a sacred herb that had taken human form, and it was not easy for him to have his own thoughts and sentience. So how could he be willing to be captured by Yang Kai? All his previous cooperation was just a disguise, and he had been waiting for an opportunity to escape, and now this opportunity had finally come. Wait for me to find the little mushroom and have her trap you here, so you can forget about ever leaving, Pu Baixiong said proudly. You want to compete with Uncle Pu? You're too naive. The pair of legs transformed from roots ran swiftly, darting deep into the mist like a wisp of smoke. Not long after, they entered a cave, and Pu Baixiong shouted, Little mushroom, are you home? There was a lingering echo, but there was no response. Pu Baixiong muttered, This fool, did he fall asleep again? And yes, he must have fallen asleep. He walked straight into the cave, and soon arrived at the deepest part of the cave. In the deepest part of the cave, there was a mushroom that was half a foot tall. It was rooted in a piece of spiritual soil, and the mushroom's umbrella rose and fell gently, as if it was a living creature that was breathing slowly. As the mushroom's umbrella rose and fell, countless spores that could not be seen with the naked eye flew out from the umbrella and filled the air. It was these spores that formed this illusory fog, causing Yang Kai to unknowingly fall into an illusion when he entered this place. All sorts of illusions appeared before his eyes, and he could not find a way out. Above the mushroom umbrella, there was a dense flow of light, and it was extremely beautiful. Pu Baixiong walked forward and raised his hand, which was made of roots, to buckle the mushroom umbrella. Little mushroom, wake up. We have business here. A lazy voice sounded. Then a pair of big eyes on the mushroom umbrella slowly opened. It seemed that it was still sleepy. It looked at Pu Baixiong, closed its eyes and said lazily, Why is it you? You're here to disturb my sleep again. Go, 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 I still want to sleep. The voice was crisp and tender. It was the voice of a little girl. Pu Baixiong raised his hand and flicked her head, causing the mushroom umbrella to shake. Don't sleep yet. Help me with something. The big eyes on the mushroom umbrella suddenly opened and stared behind Pu Baixiong. Her eyes were filled with fear as she said in shock, Pu Baixiong, why did you bring someone in? Pu Baixiong jumped in fright and quickly looked back. However, there was no one behind him. He said in surprise, What nonsense is this little girl saying? There's no one behind me. There's clearly someone. The mushroom umbrella shouted. The half-foot-tall colorful mushroom twisted and turned into the appearance of a little girl. There was a mushroom umbrella on her head. She fell to the ground and cried loudly, It's over, it's over, it's over. I'm going to be eaten. Following her crying, the spores that couldn't be seen by the naked eye flew out crazily. Pu Baixiong said shakily, Don't cry. If you keep crying, Uncle Pu won't be able to take it. And there are so many stars. You can actually see me. That's right, this fog is your ability. Since I'm in this fog, you can naturally perceive me. A ghostly voice suddenly sounded out from behind Pu Baixiong. Pu Baixiong, whose eyes were filled with illusions, turned pale with fright. Turning his head, he saw a ripple behind him, and Kai Yang's figure appear in front of him. At this moment, Yang Kai was peeling off a thin layer of gauze from his body. This gauze was none other than the shadowless muslin. As early as when he released Pu Baixiong from the sealed world bead, Yang Kai had already paid attention to him. But it turned out that Pu Baixiong was really unreliable. If Yang Kai hadn't been following this guy closely, he might have really been abandoned by him. Why are you here? Pu Baixiong was shocked and his face turned pale. Immediately he laughed foolishly. It's not you, it's definitely not you. This is an illusion, wake up. The mushroom cried loudly. It's not an illusion, he's really here. Tears flowed down her cheeks, and before they fell to the ground, they turned into a thick mist. Pu Baixiong turned his head stiffly and looked at the mushroom. It's not an illusion. Yang Kai chuckled. Pu Baixiong's roots went soft, and he knelt on the ground. Looking at Yang Kai with a flattering smile, he pointed to the mushroom and said, Master, I found a saint herb for you. This little girl should be quite delicious. You can make a soup to drink. Wah! The mushroom cried even harder, crying and cursing at the same time. Stinky grape. You actually brought people to harm me. If I had known that meeting you wouldn't be a good thing, I would have killed you. Saying so, she pounced forward and started punching and kicking Pu Baixiong. Pu Baixiong naturally resisted. The two shape-shifting saint herbs fought fiercely in front of Yang Kai, and it didn't take long for them to be beaten black and blue. However, the two saint herbs continued to fight while moving out of the cave. They were about to walk past Yang Kai. Yang Kai leaned over and grabbed them one by one. Pu Baixiong sniffled and turned his head to the side as if nothing had happened. The mushroom, on the other hand, pouted and looked at Yang Kai with an aggrieved expression. It's just like the real deal. Yang Kai looked at the two saint herbs in his hands and clicked his tongue in wonder. Suddenly he shouted, Break! In his left eye, the demon eye of annihilation released a strange light, and his vision distorted. The two saint herbs in his hands suddenly turned into two hard and cold stones. Everything he saw just now was actually an illusion. At the same time, at the entrance of the cave, Pu Baixiong and the mushroom were tiptoeing as if they were thieves. At this moment, they turned around and saw Yang Kai looking at them with a smile. The mushroom cried out and collapsed to the ground. Pu Baixiong, however, shouted, Split up! Saying so, his roots flew out and he fled. Condense! Yang Kai urged the space principles and space instantly froze. Pu Baixiong was frozen in place, unable to move, and only his eyes were left spinning. Fierce, Yang Kai clasped his hands behind his back and walked towards the two saint herbs step by step. When he had entered this fog, he hadn't been clear about it and had been careless. But after learning that this fog had hallucinogenic effects, he had paid some attention and used the soul-warming lotus's effects to clear his mind. If not for this, he wouldn't have been able to follow Pu Baixiong to this place and break through the mushroom's illusion. Even an ordinary heaven-opening realm master would find it difficult to resist such a technique. As expected of a shape-shifting saint herb from the land of immortality, it was truly extraordinary. Nothing can be done more than 3 times, grape. You're courting death. Yang Kai sneered. Reaching out, he grabbed Pu Baixiong and stared at the grape on his head, his eyes flashing. Pu Baixiong's face paled. Master, I won't dare do it again. Those words sound familiar. Pu Baixiong raised a finger and swore to the heavens. This time it's real. This lowly one will obediently follow Master from now on and serve Master faithfully. If something similar happens again, you'll cook me, Pu Baixiong said with a serious expression. Yang Kai nodded and placed him on his shoulder before turning to look at the mushroom. You want to become a pot of mushroom soup? The mushroom hurriedly said. I'll also follow Master and serve Master faithfully. Yang Kai praised. You're worth teaching. The mushroom smiled through her tears. After a simple exchange, Yang Kai learned that the mushroom in front of him was a profound color illusion mushroom. The profound color illusion mushroom did not have any other effects, but its ability to cause hallucinations was second to none. If one accidentally ate a piece, they would fall into an illusion forever, unable to escape. After the profound color illusion mushroom had taken form, this ability had been greatly magnified. She liked to sleep, so she instinctively released this ability in her sleep, which was why such a large amount of fog had formed in this territory. Yang Kai bent down and grabbed the mushroom, placing it on his other shoulder before walking out. This fog was formed by the spores released by the profound color illusion mushroom. It could hallucinate most living beings, but it could not hallucinate a sacred medicine like Pu Baixiong. This was why Grape was able to accurately find the mushroom's sleeping area. Since they were leaving now, the mushroom naturally had to retrieve this fog. As they moved forward, the surrounding fog became thinner and thinner, turning into countless spores that surged back into the mushroom's body. When Yang Kai brought the 2 sacred medicines out of the foggy territory, the fog had long disappeared when he turned back to look. In the fog, hundreds and thousands of cultivators were sleeping on the ground. It was obvious that they had accidentally entered this territory and fell into the illusion. Now that the fog was gone, they would probably wake up soon. Strictly speaking, it was still Yang Kai who had saved their lives, or they would have definitely slept to death here. With Pu Baixiong leading the way to the primordial fruit tree, Yang Kai sped along. Just a few days after the opening of the Elder's Land, 200,000 cultivators had entered this place. However, although there were many opportunities here, there were also many dangers. Just the Rainbow Tunnel alone had killed more than 10,000 cultivators, all of them killed by assassins. For example, the dandelions that Yang Kai encountered before, the strange swamp, and the fog of the profound color illusion mushroom were all fatal existences. But there was nothing in this world that was more dangerous than this. Great opportunities meant great dangers, and for a cultivator to grow, which one of them had not overcome all obstacles and obstacles? A moment of carelessness would lead to the death of countless cultivators, and only those with great fortune could walk step by step to the peak. A few days later, as they passed by a place, Grape suddenly said, "Master, not far from here, there is another sacred medicine that is similar to me and the little mushroom. Do you want to take it?" Chapter 4088. When he was captured by Yang Kai, he had tried to escape several times but failed. Now he had given up on that idea. However, this guy was really bad. He was unlucky and couldn't bear to see others get better. Naturally, he wanted Yang Kai to take the other sacred herbs to accompany him. Little Mushroom shrunk her neck and said, "That guy is not easy to deal with. Let's just forget about it." Grape glared at her. "Our master's skills are unparalleled. Even you can't charm him. Although that bamboo is not easy to deal with, how can it win against master?" "Bamboo?" Yang Kai raised his eyebrows. "What kind of sacred herb is bamboo?" Grape said, "Master, you don't know. That guy is not an ordinary bamboo. It smells very good. If you can cook it into a pot of soup, it will definitely increase master's strength." Yang Kai didn't comment. "Since it's nearby, let's go take a look." "Master, this way, I'll show you the way." Pu Baixiong was very attentive. He had probably suffered a lot under the hands of that bamboo in the past. This time, he wanted to use Yang Kai to take revenge. Yang Kai was well aware of it, but he didn't point it out. No matter if that bamboo was a sacred herb or not, since it could transform, it must be extraordinary. It wouldn't be bad to take it away. Half a day later, a purple bamboo forest appeared in front of them. Pu Baixiong climbed on Yang Kai's shoulder. He shrunk his head and looked very wretched. He stared at the bamboo forest vigilantly and whispered, "Master, that's that guy's nest. Master, you have to be careful. These bamboos are that guy's disciples and disciples. They are not to be trifled with." Yang Kai nodded and walked forward. Soon he stepped into the bamboo forest. The purple bamboos around him moved without any wind. Suddenly, a bamboo whipped over with the force of thunder. Yang Kai let out a soft cry and raised his hand to block. He felt that the whipping force was 10,000 jin. He couldn't help but be surprised. Chi chi chi. The purple bamboos seemed to have a mind of their own, as they shot towards Yang Kai like a torrential storm. Yang Kai snorted and released the golden crow true fire. Those violet bamboos instantly acted as if they were avoiding snakes and scorpions, and they didn't dare approach in the slightest. "I'm going to be roasted." Little Mushroom climbed onto Yang Kai's other shoulder with tears in its eyes. "Laoi will protect you and me," Pu Baixiong scolded. "What are you worrying about?" The little mushroom reached out and touched its own body. When it discovered that there was nothing wrong, it let out a long sigh of relief. The raging flames roiled, and there were no more obstructions on the way forward. Yang Kai soon arrived at the center of the bamboo forest. However, when he looked up, he did not see the bamboo that Pu Baixiong had mentioned. Instead, there were traces of battle here. Judging from the traces, the battle started very quickly and ended very quickly as well. One side should have been easily subdued. Someone took away the bamboo here before I did. Yang Kai was deep in thought. Although the bamboo had taken form, it shouldn't have much combat power. Just like Pu Baixiong and the small mushroom, it was natural for it to be subdued by the cultivator. Pu Baixiong felt that it was a pity. If we had known, we would have come over earlier. Although Yang Kai felt that it was a pity, he didn't care too much. He had already obtained 2 saint herbs, so this trip to the land of everlastingness was not in vain. Of course, if he didn't obtain the most important primordial spirit fruit, he probably wouldn't be able to leave the great cosmological realm safely. Yueha and the rest were still in Zhu Juin's hands, so he had to exchange the primordial spirit fruit for their safety. After leaving the violet bamboo forest, not long after, a group of cultivators suddenly rushed over. Those cultivators were covered in dust, and some of them were injured and stained with blood. When they saw Yang Kai, they were all shocked. However, after seeing his face clearly, the leading cultivator was overjoyed. Consecrated Yang? Yang Kai didn't care about them at first, but when he heard the shout, he turned his head and glanced over. People from Qixing? Only Qixing's disciples would call him that. After all, he was still Qixing's consecrated in name. All these years, he had relied on this name to plunder a huge amount of wealth from Qixing. Qixing's Deng Qi greets consecrated Yang. The leading cultivator hurriedly stepped forward and saluted, and the rest of the people also hurriedly saluted, looking at Yang Kai with a look of fear. When they saw Pu Baixiong and the little mushroom on Yang Kai's shoulders, they couldn't help but be surprised. Yang Kai nodded and asked, "What's wrong with you?" Deng Qi said with a look of shame, "We brothers came here to search for treasures under the orders of the leaders. We found something there before, but unfortunately, before we could explore it further, we were driven out." Yang Kai frowned and asked, "Who are the other party?" Deng Qi blushed with shame. "I don't know, I've never seen them before." "Are there many people?" Deng Qi was even more ashamed. "I'm alone." Yang Kai raised his eyebrows. Alone, they could drive Deng Qi and the others away. This strength was really good. There were hundreds of people in Deng Qi's group, and Deng Qi himself was a low-level Kai Tian cultivator. In Qixing, he was a great commander, on the same level as Guizian. Could it be either Lin Feng or Su Zhen? These elite disciples from the heavenly blessed land should have this ability. Yang Kai nodded slightly. "Since you were lucky enough to survive, you should cherish it. There are many dangers in this elder's land, so be careful." Deng Qi was a little disappointed when he saw that Yang Kai didn't intend to stand up for them. But as the great commander of Qixing, he also knew about the grievances between Yang Kai and Qixing, so he didn't dare to have any resentment. Seeing that Yang Kai was about to leave, Deng Qi hurriedly said, "Master, please wait." Yang Kai stopped and looked at him. "Is there anything else?" Deng Qi cupped his fists and said, "Master, the place my brothers found before seems to have Tai-yi divine water." "Tai-yi divine water?" Yang Kai's eyes lit up. "Are you sure?" Deng Qi said, "It was too far away, so I didn't see it clearly, but it is very likely to be Tai-yi divine water." Yang Kai hurriedly asked for the direction, and Deng Qi naturally told him everything he knew. Yang Kai sped away. If it were an ordinary treasure, Yang Kai might not care about it. Over the years, he had made a windfall in the Great Void Realm, and his horizons were extraordinary. After entering this elder's land and obtaining 2 saint medicines, how could he care about ordinary treasures? But this Tai-yi divine water was different. This was an extremely rare thing. Meng Hong was able to rebuild his foundation because he relied on the Tai-yi divine water to wash away the power of yin and yang and 5 elements in the seal. It could be said that the Tai-yi divine water was the capital for a cultivator to start from scratch. If there was a cultivator like Meng Hong who wanted to break and then rebuild, he must have the Tai-yi divine water. Meng Hong's portion was also obtained by chance. The value of a portion of Tai-yi divine water was no less than a 6th grade material. Although this thing was useless to Yang Kai, maybe his friends and relatives would need it in the future. Even if they didn't need it, it would be good to exchange it for other treasures. Now that he had encountered it, how could he miss it? His figure was like lightning, and he soon arrived at the place Deng Qi mentioned. Looking around, Yang Kai was slightly startled. He saw that there were many people gathered here, and they were fighting. The scene was chaotic. From the time they met Deng Qi until now, it had only been an hour, and according to Deng Qi, they had been chased away by a single person. In other words, these people had also rushed here within this hour. They were probably attracted by the fluctuations of the previous battle and came to investigate the situation. However, although there were many people here, Yang Kai didn't pay much attention to them. All his attention was attracted by a white jade stone trough. In the white jade stone trough, there was a clear liquid flowing quietly. Yang Kai's mind shook. It really was Tai Yi divine water. He had seen this thing in Meng Hong's hands before, and now that he saw it again, he naturally wouldn't mistake it. Tai Yi divine water was extremely valuable, and it was no wonder that so many people came to fight over it. It was impossible to tell how many groups of people were fighting here, and from time to time, a cultivator would fall to the ground and die. There were also many people who stood to the side and watched coldly. Although they tried their best to remain calm, they couldn't hide the greed in their eyes. Yang Kai's arrival didn't attract too much attention, but the two saint herbs on his shoulder attracted many covetous gazes. Little Mushroom was so scared that it trembled, shrinking its head under its mushroom umbrella, not daring to see anyone. Pu Baixiong suddenly leaned close to Yang Kai and whispered, "Master, that bamboo." Yang Kai was stunned. He turned his head and saw a cultivator holding a purple bamboo, looking at him. The purple bamboo was about 1 meter long and glowed with a purple light, looking extremely extraordinary. This was that bamboo. Previously, Pu Baixiong brought him to the purple bamboo forest to collect the other saint herb, but he didn't expect that someone would beat him to it. Who knew that he would run into it here? And the one who obtained the purple bamboo was a young man in black. He looked quite young, and his expression was cold and resolute. At this moment he was looking at Yang Kai. His gaze swept over Pu Baixiong and Little Mushroom. Then he nodded slightly at Yang Kai. Yang Kai pondered for a moment, then moved closer to the young man in black. The latter frowned, obviously a little afraid, but he stood still and didn't move. After a while, Yang Kai stood still, but before he could say anything, Pu Baixiong jumped down and shouted with his hands on his waist, "Stinky bamboo, you also have a day like this. Get plucked out, ha 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 ha." The purple bamboo in the young man's hand grew a pair of eyes, looking down at Pu Baixiong and sneered, "I was wondering who it was, so it's you, you damn grape. Are you looking for a beating?" Pu Baixiong was furious. "Junior, you are young and arrogant. You don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. In the past, it was Grandpa Pu who gave in to you. Do you really think I'm afraid of you?" That purple bamboo shook violently, breaking free from the young man's hand, and turned into a bamboo monster as soon as it fell to the ground. It had a slender body, 2 legs, 2 hands, and 2 bamboo branches on both sides of its head, with a few green leaves growing on them. It raised its hand and pulled out a bamboo branch, swinging it at Pu Baixiong. "You dare to take advantage of me? See how I'll whip your grape." Pu Baixiong didn't want to be outdone. His roots danced like long whips, fighting fiercely with the bamboo. Suddenly, a cry of pain was heard, and a bump appeared on Pu Baixiong's head. He was hit by the bamboo, and it was so painful that tears flowed out. That purple bamboo didn't show any mercy. It pulled out another bamboo branch on its head, and held it with both hands, as if it was waving 2 long swords, attacking Pu Baixiong until he was forced to retreat, and even a few of his roots were cut off. Chapter 4089. Grape was at a disadvantage and cried out loudly. Little Mushroom saw this and tried to stop the fight, but was also hit by the bamboo and flipped a few times. Invisible spores flew out, and the surrounding cultivators felt dizzy as illusions appeared in front of their eyes. Little Mushroom felt wronged. "Stinky bamboo, you hit me, I'll fight you." Little Mushroom lowered its head and charged at the bamboo, but was pulled back by the other party's sword. Little Mushroom fell to the ground with tears streaming down its face. Grape was enraged. You dare to bully Little Mushroom, I'll fight you too. Little Mushroom's roots danced as if it had grown countless arms, entangled with the bamboo, looking like it wanted to perish together with the bamboo. The black-robed young man's body swayed, and his eyes were slightly dazed. He suddenly shook his head. An illusion? Raising his hand, he caught the bamboo in his hand. The purple bamboo emitted a purple light that enveloped the young man, dispelling the invisible spores and waking the black-robed young man up. Looking up, Yang Kai saw that the surrounding cultivators were all in a daze. Obviously, they had unknowingly fallen into an illusion. Some of the cultivators were laughing loudly, while others were flying around, causing Yang Kai's hair to stand on end. The bamboo said, "Kid, don't be afraid, Master Bamboo is here. That Little Mushroom's illusion won't be able to do anything to you." The black-robed young man nodded. Yang Kai also grabbed Pu Baixiong and Little Mushroom and placed them on his shoulders. He looked at the young man with interest. "How should I address you?" The young man was silent for a while before he cupped his fists. "Xiangying greets Brother Yang." Yang Kai raised his eyebrows. "You recognize me?" Xiangying said, "Brother Yang's name is like thunder in my ears." "Infamous, right?" Yang Kai smiled faintly. Xiangying frowned. He couldn't figure out what Yang Kai meant. He had heard that Yang Kai was extremely fierce, killing thousands of lightning sword pavilion cultivators in one battle, and slaughtering tens of thousands of sword pavilion cultivators in the star market. He could be said to be a killing star, but now that he had seen him in person, he knew that he was different from the rumors. However, after all, he was not familiar with Yang Kai. One may know a person's face but not his heart, so he did not dare to jump to conclusions. In his heart, he was very wary of Yang Kai. "I want to go get the Tai purifying divine water. Brother Xiang, do you have any advice?" Yang Kai tilted his head and looked at him. Although there were many people here, all of them had fallen into the illusion. At this moment, their minds were in chaos, and they were not a threat. The only ones who were conscious were Yang Kai and Xiangying. Xiangying said indifferently, "Let's rely on our own methods." Clearly, he was unwilling to back down. The Tai divine water was also very attractive to him. Yang Kai nodded and stared at the purple bamboo in his hand. He changed the topic and said, "Brother Xiang, this bamboo is extraordinary. Are you willing to part with it?" Before Xiangying could say anything, Bamboo angrily said, "Don't even think about Master Bamboo. You're just like dead grape. You're definitely not a good person." Yang Kai was speechless and laughed. "It seems that we are not fated." He was just asking casually. Since Bamboo was unwilling, Yang Kai did not want to force him. If he really wanted to snatch it, Xiangying would not be his opponent. Ignoring him, Zhang Xian strode forward. Grape said nervously, "Master, be careful. This place is a little strange." Yang Kai smiled slightly and said, "It's impossible for heaven and earth spiritual treasures to not be guarded. However, even if there are dangers, we can break through them with force." As soon as he finished speaking, he and Xiangying both rushed forward. The moment their figures flickered, the two of them each sent out a palm strike towards the other. With a loud bang, Yang Kai's figure shook slightly as he let out a small cry of surprise. Surprisingly, Xiangying had not been sent flying by his palm strike. "Amazing," Yang Kai praised. Although it was only a brief contact, Yang Kai could still see that this Xiangying was extraordinary. In the other party's palm, there were several types of yin, yang, and 5 elements energy lingering around it, each of them possessing great power. Moreover, the quality of these attacks was also quite good. Impressively, they were all at the 6th grade. In other words, what Xiangying had condensed were all 6th grade heaven-opening materials. If not, he would not have been able to withstand his palm. Yang Kai raised his eyebrows and said, "Brother Xiang, are you a disciple of the Blessed Enclave?" As far as he could see, only a few people from the Blessed Enclave had the ability to condense 6th grade force. Xiangying stabilized his body and suppressed the rolling blood in his heart. He was full of admiration. Brother Yang is really amazing. This little brother comes from a humble background and does not come from any Blessed Enclave or Blessed Enclave. Yang Kai's eyes lit up. "I understand." This Xiangying was also a bearer. Only the power of a divine spirit could cultivate such an excellent bearer. But Yang Kai did not know which divine spirit bearer he was. He had long heard from Zhu Jiuyin that many divine spirits had secretly cultivated their bearers, allowing them to cultivate diligently and enhance their strength so that they could seize the opportunity in the land of eternity. But so far, Yang Kai only knew of Su Zhen and the others, so he did not expect to meet one here. No wonder he could collect the purple bamboo. Since he was a bearer of a divine spirit, he naturally had this ability. While speaking, Yang Kai did not stop and quickly moved closer to the white jade trough. Xiang Ying's expression changed slightly when he saw this, and a layer of blood mist suddenly burst out from his body. Obviously, he had used some kind of secret technique to increase his speed greatly, as he also rushed towards the white jade trough. Now that only the two of them were competing for the Tai purifying divine water, whoever could reach the white jade trough first would have the upper hand. Naturally, he was unwilling to be left behind. But soon, he showed a look of surprise because no matter how hard he tried, he could not get close to the white jade trough. Turning his head, Yang Kai also showed a stunned expression. The white jade trough was actually not too far away from the position of the two of them, only about 1,000 meters away. With the strength of the two of them, this distance did not exist, and they could cross it in a single step. But strangely, no matter how fast the two of them ran, the distance between them and the white jade trough did not decrease at all. The stone trough was always about 1,000 meters away from them. Looking around, the cultivator was still trapped in the illusion, and the distance between them did not change much. It was as if he and Yang Kai were still in the same place. Xiang Ying's face was solemn, and cold sweat broke out on his forehead. This situation was too strange, and he had never encountered anything like it before. After running for a while, many people suddenly appeared around them. These people had been invisible before, but at this moment, they appeared around them like ghosts, each of them desperately trying to get close to the white jade trough, but unfortunately, they were powerless. There were also some cultivator who stood still and looked at the people around them as if they were fools. Both Yang Kai and Xiang Ying were taken aback. What was going on with these people? Where did they come from? These people were definitely not the ones who were trapped in the illusion just now, because those people were still trapped in the illusion and were unable to extricate themselves. Two more came. An old man laughed loudly. "Ha, it's over. I'm afraid we can't get out. I was wondering how there was no danger around such a world treasure. But it turns out that this danger is undetectable and can only be found when one steps in." Another middle-aged man who stood still shook his head and sighed, his face ashen. "What the hell is this place? I want to get out." Some people tried to run in the opposite direction, but they couldn't escape from this place. There seemed to be an invisible cage around the white jade trough, trapping everyone inside. This cage was strange and unpredictable. No matter which direction they ran in, they couldn't escape even half a step. Yang Kai looked around for a while before stopping and asking, "Mushroom, is this an illusion?" The little mushroom shook its head like a rattledrum. "I don't feel it." The black magic mushroom itself had the effect of causing hallucinations. Since it said so, it should not be an illusion. What's more, Yang Kai did not notice any trace of an illusion. If it was really an illusion, the soul-warming lotus could break it. "It's not an illusion." Yang Kai frowned and turned to ask a person not far away. "Old man, how long have you been here?" The old man was the one who spoke before. Hearing the question, he said, "Ha, I've been trapped here for 3 days. I was the first to come in, and these guys came in one after another in the past few days." Yang Kai was speechless. There were at least a few hundred cultivators trapped here. In other words, over the past 3 days, these hundreds of people had discovered the extreme divine purification water and wanted to take it for themselves. But as a result, they had fallen into this strange cage and were unable to extricate themselves. He and Xiang Ying were the last to enter, and the reason why they hadn't discovered these people before was probably because they hadn't completely entered this invisible cage. Only when they set foot in this place could they see these people. "Old man, did you find anything?" Yang Kai asked again. The old man sighed. "If I found anything, why would this old man be trapped here?" He looked up and shouted, "Stop running, you can't escape. This old man has been running here for 3 days, and I haven't seen the stone trough. How much longer do you want to run?" Hearing this, everyone gradually stopped. Someone said, "What's wrong with this place? I can clearly feel that I'm moving forward. But why are we still in the same place?" This was something that no one could understand, which was why it was so strange. There may be a natural array here, or it may be an illusion array, or a maze array. If we don't break this array, we will be trapped here forever. How do we break this array? Friends, who is proficient in array formations? This little brother knows a little, but I can't see anything. Maybe it's because I'm not skilled enough. Then what should we do? Are we going to wait for death here? The group of people were clamoring, one after another, all talking at once. It was very lively. The old man kept comforting everyone's emotions, and it was not easy for him to calm the crowd down. He said loudly, "Since none of you can break this array, then this old man's opinion is to break it with force. Let's attack together and use our strongest power. This old man doesn't believe that this damn array can withstand it." Old man's words make sense. Someone agreed. With so many of us attacking together, even if there is a great array here, we will definitely be able to break it. After we break the array, everyone will have a share of the Tai divine purification water. Everyone will share it equally. Someone shouted. No one responded to this, which made him lose interest. Chapter 4090. The old man was the first to suggest that they work together to break the formation. Naturally, he would be the mediator. Everyone could only stay where they were. They could not get close to each other, nor could they move forward or backward. In this way, although there were many people here, they could not set up a formation. They could only use the divine technique to combine their strength. After the discussion, the old man was about to give an order when he suddenly saw Yang Kai's strange expression. He turned his head and said, "Young friend, you seem to have found something?" Yang Kai's eyes were full of splendor. He nodded and said, "I have some idea, but I can't understand it. I need some time." The old man's eyes lit up. "Since you have found something, why don't you tell us so that we can study it together?" Yes, one person's wisdom is short, but the wisdom of many is long. Why don't you tell us what you found, and we can solve this problem together? Someone agreed. Yang Kai sneered. "It's my ability that I found something. Why should I tell you?" The old man's face darkened. He scolded angrily. "Young man, you are so rude." The old man beside him also shook his head. "Young friend, you are wrong. We are trapped here, and need to work together to get out. Young friend, it's better not to hide anything now," Yang Kai said lightly. "It's not that I don't want to tell you, but you won't understand even if I tell you." The old man shook his head and sighed. "Keeping things to yourself will only harm others. This young man is really arrogant. Young man, don't run away when we get out of here. I will talk to you properly." Yang Kai ignored him. He closed his eyes and released his divine sense, silently sensing the situation. Seeing him like this, the old man no longer tried to force the issue, and began coordinating with everyone. As soon as he gave the order, the power of his secret treasures burst forth, causing the surrounding space to fluctuate violently, creating layer after layer of ripples that spread outwards. Everyone watched anxiously. Even when the power of the divine technique dissipated, there was no change in the surroundings. The old man's face darkened. He shouted again. Another round of divine technique was displayed. The rumbling sounds were endless. The scene of hundreds of cultivators attacking together was quite spectacular. Moreover, in order to escape, very few people held back. Every attack could be said to be at full strength. The void trembled, and the universe was overturned. The aftermath of the power spread out, and rings of light trembled endlessly. 1 hour, 2 hours, 6 hours. Hundreds of cultivators were so tired that they almost vomited blood. Their faces were pale, and their breathing was unstable. They were all from the Emperor realm. Although they had their own opportunities in the great cosmological realm, and had condensed a lot of yin yang and 5 elements power, they could not hold on for long periods of time. However, after such a long time, There was no effect at all. Many people were discouraged. The old man kept trying to boost their morale, but there was nothing he could do. He had no choice but to let them rest for a while and recover their strength. He turned his head and saw that Yang Kai was still standing in the same place, not moving at all. He could not help but feel a little annoyed. They were all risking their lives to break out of this predicament and leave this place. This young man, on the other hand, was just standing there calmly and seemed to be comprehending the mystery. Who knew if he was saving his strength and waiting for the critical moment to reap the benefits? At this moment, hundreds of people suddenly rushed in together and fell into this invisible cage. It was the cultivator who had been hit by the illusion that had finally recovered. They wanted to snatch the Tai divine purification water, but in the end, they followed in the footsteps of their predecessors. Like the previous cultivator, these newcomers rushed forward desperately, but they were still in the same place. They could not get close to the white jade trough at all. Everyone looked at these newcomers with pity, as if they had known this would happen. The old man explained the situation in a clear voice, and only then did they stop struggling. Now that hundreds of friends have fallen into this place, our strength has increased greatly. This time, we will definitely be able to break out of this predicament. The old man was very excited. Everyone quickly rest. We will attack together in 2 hours. Everyone cheered loudly. 2 hours later, under the old man's command, nearly 1,000 people performed the divine technique together. Its power was more than twice as strong as before. Another few hours later, nearly 1,000 people stood in the same place with pale faces, panting and looking defeated. So many of them attacked together, but they could not shake this invisible cage at all. Everyone's heart sank to the bottom. They really did not know how to break out of this predicament. There is no unbreakable formation in this world. This old man does not believe in heresy. Everyone take a rest. We will start all over again. Although the old man had consumed a lot of energy, he was still very motivated. Unfortunately, morale was something that could be boosted at the first spurt, weakened at the second, and exhausted at the third. After a few times, many people became pessimistic. They no longer had the same enthusiasm as before. When they attacked together for the third time, many people were just coping with it. Although the old man was angry, he could do nothing about it. Suddenly, a loud laugh sounded. Yang Kai, who had been comprehending the mysteries with his eyes closed, suddenly opened his eyes. His eyes flickered as he stared at the void in front of him and praised. Wonderful, wonderful. So that's how it is. As he spoke, he suddenly took a step forward. When he took this step, everyone's eyes widened as they stared at him in shock. This was because this step had actually been taken. Before this, all the cultivators who had been trapped here, no matter how they tried to escape, looked like they were walking on the same spot. Little friend. The old man looked at Yang Kai nervously. How did you do it? Although Yang Kai had a smile on his face, his eyes were very serious. He said casually, space folds and extends. It seems like it is only a distance of 1,000 feet. But in fact, no matter how you run, the space under your feet will extend infinitely, giving people the illusion that they are walking in the same place. It turns out that the great Tao of space can be used like this. This world is really magical. As he spoke, Yang Kai took another step forward. At the same time, the seal in his body suddenly solidified. His seal was the great Tao of void. Now that he was trapped in this predicament, he had gained something from comprehending it for a long time, which made his seal stronger. One must know that his seal had been solidified by the Tao-E divine water. It was extremely difficult to improve it. It was obvious that he had gained a lot from comprehending it this time. Space folds and extends? The old man and the other cultivator were confused, but Xiangying frowned thoughtfully. You won't understand even if I tell you. Just stand there and wait. Wait for me to take the divine water, and you will be able to escape. Yang Kai was too lazy to explain too much. This was related to the great Tao of space, and the great Tao of space. Without saying that they had cultivated it, they would not be able to understand it. Step by step, Yang Kai stepped forward. Although his speed was slow, he was indeed approaching the white jade trough. After Yang Kai had taken 10 steps, Xiangying suddenly moved the purple bamboo in his hand in the direction he had taken. Above the purple bamboo, a layer of purple light rippled, and Xiangying's figure strangely moved forward a meter. Yang Kai sensed something and turned around, just in time to see this scene. His heart skipped a beat, as he wondered if Xiangying also cultivated the great Tao of space. Xiangying looked up at him and nodded gently. "Many thanks, Brother Yang, for enlightening me." The purple bamboo in his hand moved forward again, and a purple light rippled as his figure moved forward again. This guy did not cultivate the great Tao of space. Yang Kai did not feel any fluctuations of space principles from him. The only reason he could do this was because of the purple bamboo's power. The purple bamboo gave Yang Kai a feeling that it could break through all methods. Strictly speaking, the strangeness of this place could be considered a divine technique, but it was a divine technique born from the heavens and earth. Under the purple bamboo's effect, it naturally could not affect Xiangying. Is this purple bamboo saint herb really so strong? Yang Kai glanced at Grape and Little Mushroom on his shoulder, and suddenly felt that these two were too weak. Under the watchful eyes of nearly 1,000 people, Yang Kai stepped forward one step at a time, while Xiangying drifted forward like a ghost. The two of them kept moving closer to the white jade trough. Although Yang Kai was a few steps ahead, he was quickly caught up by Xiangying. In less than half a cup of tea's time, the two of them were only a few meters away from the white jade trough. Xiangying suddenly raised his hand and pointed the purple bamboo at Yang Kai, saying lightly, "Brother Yang, please excuse me." With this point, Yang Kai took a step forward, but was unable to do so, and instead remained in place. In that instant, Xiangying threw himself in front of the white jade trough, and raised his hand to summon a jade bottle, snatching the extreme divine purification water from the stone trough. Yang Kai laughed. "If you hadn't taken action against me, I would have hesitated, but since you're so heartless, don't blame me for being unjust." Pushing his space principles, Yang Kai shouted, "Retreat!" Xiangying was just about to take the extreme divine purification water from the stone trough into his jade bottle, but at that moment, his vision blurred and his hand disappeared. When he regained his senses, he had unknowingly returned to his original position, 1,000 meters away from the stone trough. Xiangying's face suddenly became as black as the bottom of a pot. He had used the purple bamboo heaven-breaking earth divine technique to approach the stone trough step by step. But how could he compare to Yang Kai comprehending the essence of this divine technique and borrowing it for his own use? One was breaking, the other was borrowing. The difference between the two was obvious. Beside the white jade trough, Yang Kai stood alone, looking down at the divine water in the trough with a grin on his face. There was no need for a container. With a single thought, Yang Kai opened his sealed world bead and carefully stored the extreme divine purification water in the white jade trough. There was a lot of extreme divine purification water, enough for dozens of people to use. After a short while, Yang Kai had collected all the divine water. The group of people looked at him with envy and annoyance. Yang Kai's actions were not even giving them a sip of the divine water. The moment Yang Kai collected all the extreme divine purification water, the white jade stone platform in front of him suddenly distorted, gradually becoming transparent, and soon disappeared. The extreme divine purification water bell was born with the essence of heaven and earth. The white jade trough seemed to be solid, but in fact, it was just a manifestation of the heaven and earth principles. When the divine water disappeared, so did the container. At the same time, the invisible force that had been binding everyone disappeared completely. The moment they were free, dozens of people leaped into the air and rushed towards Yang Kai, shouting, "Junior, leave the divine water behind." Chapter 4091. Since ancient times, wealth had moved people's hearts. If it was an ordinary treasure, it would be fine, but this Tai divine purification water was extremely precious. The great cosmological realm itself was a huge natural treasure trove that no one had set foot in for thousands of years, but no one had ever heard of the appearance of Tai divine purification water. It was only in this ancient land that everyone had the opportunity to find it. so it was not surprising that it attracted everyone's attention. Not to mention, Yang Kai had a transformed sacred herb on his left and right shoulders. They had long noticed the existence of Pu Baixiong and the little mushroom, but they had been unable to think too much about it when they were trapped. Now that they had escaped, their minds immediately became active. 2 transformed sacred herbs and a pool of Tai divine purification water were enough to make anyone risk their lives. Dozens of people took the lead to attack, each of them aggressive and merciless. Obviously, they were all planning to kill Yang Kai and seize the treasures. The remaining people reacted a little slower, but they followed closely behind, clamoring incessantly. Yang Kai stood in place and looked around coldly. The dozens of people pounced on him with an indifferent expression, and he snorted coldly. "If it weren't for me, you would still be trapped in that invisible cage. I helped you escape, but you don't want to repay me. And now you want to bite the hand that feeds you? Human nature is really cold. It makes me bitterly disappointed." One of them laughed and said, "Little brother, you're right. Come with me quickly. Don't pay attention to this group of ungrateful people." He was the first to pounce in front of Yang Kai, reaching out to grab Yang Kai. In that big hand, the power of yin and yang and the 5 elements lingered, turning into a territory field that reinforced and restrained each other, and enveloped Yang Kai. Yang Kai didn't even bother to look at him, instead lifting his finger and pressing it against his forehead. With a hiss, a blood arrow shot out from the back of this person's head. That person stood still in front of Yang Kai, his big hand stretched out, but as if he had been immobilized, he did not move at all. Dozens of divine technique enveloped Yang Kai at the same time. His figure swayed, and dragon shields flew around his body. The next moment, a sky full of light enveloped him. Boom, boom, boom. Someone cried out in alarm. "You guys be gentler. Don't shatter those 2 stalks of saint medicine." However, these words were clearly shouted a little too late. Seeing Yang Kai's figure disappear under the numerous divine technique, that person's face twitched, and his heart ached so much that it was bleeding. With such a crazy attack, how could those 2 stalks of saintly medicine still be preserved? Most likely, they had already been smashed into fine powder. The might of the divine technique gradually dispersed, and a figure appeared once again. Everyone's expression instantly changed slightly, and they exclaimed endlessly. It was Yang Kai who stood on the spot without the slightest injury, and even his clothes didn't have the slightest crease. On the contrary, the first few dozen people who had pounced over suddenly froze on the spot. Accompanied by a series of soft hissing sounds, arrows of blood shot out from the back of these people's heads, and they fell on their backs, instantly losing all signs of life. There was a bloody hole on each of these people's foreheads, piercing through their heads and consciousness, and obliterating their divine sense. Their eyes were filled with shock and horror, as if they had seen something extremely frightening before they died. A series of gasps rang out, and the figures charging toward Yang Kai suddenly froze on the spot, their gazes slightly trembling as they looked ahead. In that instant of chaos just now, no one saw clearly how Yang Kai had attacked. They only saw that these few dozen people had taken the initiative to attack, and all of them had died an unnatural death. On Yang Kai's shoulder, Pu Baixiong trembled like a sieve, and his face was ashen. Just now, when he saw Yang Kai being surrounded and attacked, he thought that he was dead for sure. Who would have thought that after a single exchange, the few dozen people who had attacked him would all die? He couldn't help but exclaim in surprise in his heart. This guy is so strong? He was a saint medicine that had taken human form, and wasn't too clear about the strength of a human cultivator. But Yang Kai could instantly kill several dozen people with his own strength, so his strength was obviously not bad. Blood flowed, and the smell of blood filled the air, and the sound of heartbeats rose one after another. Dozens of people fell to the ground, causing the remaining people to be both shocked and somewhat incredulous, and the atmosphere became extremely solemn for a time. Although there were many people here, they were as scattered as sand. Previously, they had worked together to solve the dilemma, but now that they wanted to seize the treasure, they naturally had their own thoughts, making it difficult for them to work together. Among the crowd, some people carefully looked at Yang Kai's face, and suddenly their eyes widened, and their bodies trembled violently. It was him, the god of slaughter from Red Star City. Although Yang Kai had displayed great power in Red Star City, and many people had seen his face, in recent years, he had rarely appeared in front of outsiders, so there were not many people who knew him. Only the earliest cultivator in Red Star City had seen his face, and later people had only heard of his notoriety and never seen him again. However, this didn't mean that no one recognized him. Among the thousands of people here, there were always a few who had seen Yang Kai's fierce demeanor from afar. Before, they had been trapped in the invisible cage and didn't pay much attention to it. But now that they looked carefully, they recognized Yang Kai's identity. Suddenly, their faces turned pale and they turned to flee. As early as a few years ago, Yang Kai had killed thousands of people from Thunder Light Sword Pavilion by himself, and then massacred the entire star city of Thunder Light Sword Pavilion. Even if there were thousands of people here, what could they do to him? If a fight really broke out, it was unknown how many people here could survive. There was great fear between life and death. Although the sacred transformation pill and Tai divine water were precious, how could they be more important than one's own life? Shwa shwa shwa. Nearly 100 people quickly left. It wasn't that these people knew Yang Kai, but rather that they had formed teams to explore and search for treasure in this land of no elders. Nearly 1,000 people attacked together, and the scene was spectacular. Before they arrived, one divine technique after another was already used. Yang Kai narrowed his eyes slightly, standing in place as if he was scared silly. Pu Baixiong grabbed his hair nervously and shouted, "Quickly hide!" Little Mushroom shrunk his neck, directly hiding his whole body under the mushroom umbrella. A world-destroying aura enveloped him, and seeing that those attacks were all about to reach him, Yang Kai suddenly shook his body, raised his hand and pointed. A golden crow flew out from his fingertip. That golden crow was small, only the size of a palm, but it was vivid as if it was a living thing. With a cry, the golden crow spread its wings and flew toward the countless divine technique, its body covered in raging flames. The power of the divine technique slammed into the golden crow. But not only did it not shatter, the golden crow even absorbed the power of the divine technique. 1 turned into 2, 2 turned into 4, 4 turned into 8. In the blink of an eye, the sky was filled with golden crows, following the source of the divine technique and pouncing toward the cultivator. Many of the cultivator paled in fright. Some hurriedly retreated, while others used their power to block, forming a protective barrier around their bodies. However, the golden crow true flames were extremely domineering, and even heaven-opening cultivators were unable to block them, let alone these cultivators from the Emperor realm. Any cultivator that was pounced on by the golden crow was instantly set ablaze, turning into a fireball as they cried out in agony. One figure after another fell from the sky like dumplings, their vitality extinguished before they hit the ground. Chapter 4092. This is the Golden Crow Primordial Fire? A cultivator's expression changed drastically as he cried out in shock. Those little golden crows were extremely lifelike and had obvious characteristics. It was difficult for anyone not to recognize them. Many cultivators were shocked and hurriedly retreated. But how could they retreat? Those little golden crows pounced over and burned them into fireballs, causing them to scream and fall. The scene was empty. More than half of the 1,000 cultivators were killed in an instant. The cultivators who were lucky enough to survive all screamed in fear and used various escape techniques to escape. You want to run now? Too late. Yang Kai snorted coldly and activated the space principles. In an instant, with himself as the center, the space within 1,000 feet radius was under his control. A cultivator looked back as he fled, and then saw a scene that shocked him to his core. No matter how hard he tried, he could not open up the distance between Yang Kai and himself. It was as if he could not move forward. This scene was familiar. It was the experience of falling into the invisible spherical cage. In that invisible cage, everyone was in the same situation. They desperately rushed toward the white jade trough. But no matter what they did, they could not get close at all. Could it be that the restriction of heaven and earth had reappeared? Just as this thought popped up, a golden crow had already pounced over and covered him. After 10 breaths, charred corpses fell one after another, and their vitality was extinguished. Of the 1,000 cultivators who fell into this place, except for the 100 or so who recognized Yang Kai and fled at the beginning, the rest died without a burial place. Yang Kai slowly exhaled a turbid breath. He was neither happy nor shocked, but there was a hint of contemplation in his eyes. The restriction of heaven and earth naturally could not reappear. The reason why so many cultivators were stuck in the same place was because he had activated the space principles. The mysteries of the space folding and space extension allowed him to see another unique use of the space principles, and he benefited a lot from it. By activating the space principles, he could also use methods similar to the restriction of heaven and earth. This method was not a secret art, nor was it a divine technique. It was just a flexible use of the space principles. It was just that he had never thought of this before. This encounter had opened a window for him, allowing his attainments in the great Tao of space to take another step forward. After testing it out, he found that it was indeed extraordinarily powerful. Turning his head, Yang Kai nodded slightly. "Thank you, Brother Xiang, for your help." Previously, he thought that Xiang Ying was also tempted by the wealth and wanted to make things difficult for him. However, when those people made their moves, he found that he was wrong. Xiang Ying was mixed in the crowd, and the purple bamboo in her hand was quietly poking around. She was secretly attacking those people. However, his actions were very subtle. At that time, everyone's attention was attracted by the wealth on Yang Kai's body, so no one realized that he had secretly killed him. More than a dozen people had died at his hands. My actions were superfluous. Xiang Ying slowly shook his head and put away the purple bamboo. "Farewell, we'll meet again." His character seemed to be very proud and aloof. Previously, he had only taken action because he was not used to seeing those people bullying him with numbers. However, after seeing Yang Kai's strength with his own eyes, he knew that even if he did not take action, those ugly melons and cracked dates could not do anything to Yang Kai. Staring at his back, Yang Kai watched him leave, thinking to himself that this guy was quite an interesting person. Yang Kai couldn't help wondering where he came from and which divine spirit had chosen him as a vessel. But in any case, Xiang Ying had obtained the Saint Medicine purple bamboo on this trip and had a divine spirit to lay a solid foundation for him. If he could leave the great cosmological realm alive, there would definitely be a place for him in the 3,000 worlds in the future. In fact, every time the great cosmological realm opened, countless young masters would be born. There were too many treasures in the great cosmological realm, and high-quality materials that were rare in the outside world were everywhere here. As long as one's luck was not too bad, one could always obtain some opportunities in the great cosmological realm and lay the foundation for breaking through to the heaven-opening realm. However, the premise was that one had to leave this place alive. With a slight thought, Yang Kai's divine sense enveloped the surroundings, searching for the space rings left behind by the dead cultivator. Although Yang Kai had many treasures now, these people had fought in the great cosmological realm for more than a decade, so they should have obtained some good things, so he naturally could not miss them. One space ring after another flew towards him and was thrown into the sealed world bead. Suddenly, Yang Kai raised his brow and looked in a certain direction, saying in surprise, "There's still a fish that slipped through the net?" With a flick of his finger, a moon blade flew in that direction. In the perception of his divine sense, there was still a faint aura there. Obviously, someone had survived and was secretly hiding, which was a little beyond his expectations. However, the other party's concealment was not perfect, and Yang Kai's divine sense was powerful enough to give himself away. With a swish, the moon blade cut through space and slashed in that direction. Below a charred corpse, a figure soared into the sky. The crescent blade brushed past his feet, almost cutting off his legs. However, that person's expression did not change. He turned around in midair and quickly fled into the distance. His movements were extremely nimble. Yang Kai laughed. "Still want to run?" With a thought, the space folded again, And in an instant, no matter how that person ran, he could not escape. Yang Kai frowned slightly, because what he saw was that this person was not running in place, but was instead slowly moving forward. Although his speed was very slow, he was indeed moving forward. This person was affected by his space Tao, and could not escape from the expanding space, but he was not as powerless as the others before him. This guy seems to have some skill. Of course, this also had something to do with Yang Kai. He had just comprehended this method, and was not very proficient in using it. It was easy to bully some weak people, but when faced with a strong opponent, it would have flaws. After running for a while, that person seemed to have noticed that something was wrong and turned his head to look back, only to see Yang Kai walking towards him step by step. Knowing that he could not escape, he could not help but sigh, simply stopping and smiling bitterly. "Brother, do you want to kill me? I didn't attack you before, I was just watching the show." "Then the price you paid for watching the show was a bit high." Yang Kai looked at him with a smile that did not reach his eyes. The person shrugged. "Who said so?" Suddenly, his face turned serious. "Brother, what do I have to do for you to let me go?" "Did I say?" Yang Kai raised his hand and pointed at him. "Do I have to let you go?" The golden crow whistled and rushed towards that person. That person's face turned serious, suddenly forming a seal with both hands and shouting, "Immovable mountain!" Asterisk roar. Asterisk a beast roar resounded through the sky, and then a layer of yellow light suddenly appeared around that person's body. It was the power of the earth element he had condensed. The power of the earth element was rich and pure, not inferior to Yang Kai's. It was at least a 7th grade earth element. The power of the earth element twisted and transformed into the phantom of a giant tortoise, protecting him in the middle. The golden crow swooped down and crashed into the phantom of the giant tortoise, but it could not hurt him, and was completely blocked. The golden crow true fire had always been successful, and this was the first time it had been blocked by someone. Yang Kai's expression changed. Divine technique Dharma idol. However, he soon realized that something was wrong. This phantom of the giant tortoise had not reached the level of the divine technique Dharma idol. It should be a defensive divine technique that this person had comprehended through his own earth element, just like his dragon shield. Amidst the crackling sounds, the golden crow true fire and the phantom of the giant tortoise continued to collide. A moment later, the golden crow dissipated, but the phantom of the giant tortoise was still as solid as a rock. The person wiped the cold sweat on his forehead and squeezed out a smile. "Brother, where there is room for error, there is room for mercy." The bearer of the thick earth mystic tortoise? Yang Kai raised his eyebrows. He had seen all kinds of divine spirits in the periphery of the land of noblemen, some in their original forms, some in human form, but he had not seen the thick earth mystic tortoise, so he assumed that it was mixed in with the crowd in human form. The defensive divine technique that this person in front of him had displayed turned into the image of the thick earth mystic tortoise, so it was obvious that he had inherited the true teachings of the thick earth mystic tortoise. Zhu Juyin had once told him that the divine spirits had put in a lot of effort for their bearers. Some divine spirits had even split a part of their inner elixir's power to help their bearers condense yin and yang, and the 5 elements, so that they could win the battle of spirit seizing. The nature of Zhu Juyin's inner elixir was not suitable, so Yang Kai had never made this request. However, the thick earth mystic tortoise was different. It was an earth divine spirit, and the power of its inner elixir was pure earth element power. If it split a part of its power to its bearer, it could condense the power of the 7th level. These bearers, because they had a part of the power of the inner elixir of the divine spirit, could display some of the divine spirit's abilities, which were very powerful. Zhu Juyin had warned him that if he encountered such a bearer, he must be careful, because no one could tell what kind of trump card they had, and if he was not careful he would die. Yang Kai did not expect to encounter such a bearer, who had obtained the true inheritance of the divine spirit so quickly. Not to mention the other abilities of the thick earth mystic tortoise, its defense was outstanding. The bearer in front of him had obtained the power of the divine spirit, so he could naturally withstand the burning of the golden crow primordial fire. That person greeted with one palm. Fang Yu greets brother Yang. I have heard of your name for a long time. And now that I have met you today, you are indeed outstanding. I admit that I am inferior. Grape called out. Master, this guy is flattering you. Little Mushroom, who was on the other shoulder, nodded vigorously with a look of disdain. Fang Yu said seriously, I am speaking from the bottom of my heart, not flattering. Yang Kai raised his hand and knocked on the giant tortoise phantom outside his body, making a dull thud. He said in surprise, Your tortoise shell is quite hard. Fang Yu smiled slightly. The thick earth mystic tortoise is good at defense. Junior brother has obtained its true inheritance and inherited this ability. I have made a fool of myself in front of brother. Yang Kai praised. With this ability, I am afraid that only those divine spirits in the great cosmological realm can hurt you. Fang Yu blushed with shame. But they are still no match for brother. Brother's space Tao is unpredictable, and the golden crow primordial fire can burn anything. It is truly fascinating. Hand over your space ring. Yang Kai stretched out his hand. Huh? Fang Yu was stunned. Yang Kai stared at him without saying a word. Grape called out. Brat, Master is asking you to hand over your space ring. Master is going to rob you. The corner of Fang Yu's mouth twitched. Brother, I thought we could sit down and have a good chat. Chapter 4093. If you want to talk, we can talk later. Give me your space ring. You must have obtained a lot of good things from the thick earth black tortoise, right? If it weren't for the tortoise's shell, Yang Kai's hand would have almost reached Fang Yu's nose. Fang Yu angrily retorted. Brother, how can you be like this? You have so many treasures. Do you still need my little belongings? Even if you rob me, it won't increase your wealth by much. Yang Kai indifferently said. You have to be punished for your mistakes. Fang Yu angrily said. I really didn't attack you. After a pause, he weakly said. Fine, I secretly attacked you. But I didn't mean to kill you. I just wanted to see if there was a gap between us. He should have recognized Yang Kai long ago, and heard of Yang Kai's deeds. Although he had obtained the thick earth black tortoise's true inheritance, and cultivated the earth element with the power of its monster core, he wasn't confident he could beat Yang Kai by much. Just now, he had mixed in with the crowd and quietly attacked just to test how much he had grown recently. Who knew the result would be such a blow to him? Would he be able to snatch the innate spirit fruit and satisfy the thick earth black tortoise's request? Sighing slightly, Fang Yu said, Brother, you can't kill me. My coiling stone seal can't be broken without wild force. With this seal, no one in this land of eternity can kill me. Yang Kai slowly said, Your divine technique is indeed good, but it should consume a lot of energy to use, right? Not to mention whether I can break your shell. Even if I can't, I can still exhaust you to death, unless you have a way to escape from me. Fang Yu's face paled and he swayed. Brother's eyesight is really sharp. What Kai Yang said wasn't wrong. Although the boulder seal's defense wasn't bad, using it required a huge amount of energy. Maintaining it for a long period of time was especially taxing on his body. Even if he used all his strength, he could only maintain it for half an hour. After half an hour, he would be completely exhausted, and the boulder seal would collapse. Yang Kai was proficient in the space Tao, and he couldn't escape, so stalling for time was meaningless to him. It could be said that Yang Kai's words were hurtful. Fang Yu's face withered. Junior brother admits defeat, brother, please show mercy. Saying so, he sighed heavily, then dispersed the coiling stone seal, and threw the space ring in his hand to Kai. Yang Kai's TSSSSS, Yang Kai, Yang Kai. If it weren't for Zhu Jiuyin, Yang Kai wouldn't have been able to obtain the Daoyi divine water and cultivate the Yin-Yang inverse 5 elements profound universe sutra. Seeing Yang Kai take out one good thing after another from the ring, Fang Yu was so depressed that he was about to vomit blood. He kept shouting, Enough, brother, you should at least leave some for me. Yang Kai ignored him and continued to fiddle with the ring. After a while, he threw the space ring back to him. Fang Yu caught it and checked the ring. He immediately groaned and clutched his chest in grief and indignation. He was in so much pain that he wished he was dead, although the rings were Whir, whir, whir. Fang Yu felt like more than 10 kilograms of flesh had been cut off from his body. It was so painful. He grabbed the space ring, turned around, and left at a ridiculously fast speed. Farewell, we won't meet again. He didn't want to run into Yang Kai again. This time he admitted defeat. Although he lost a lot of things, he still managed to save his life. He ran for 1,000 kilometers before looking back, and seeing that Yang Kai didn't chase after him. He breathed a sigh of relief and comforted himself. One who survives a great disaster is bound to have good fortune in the future. They're just worldly possessions. I can't bring them with me when I'm born, and I can't take them with me when I die. I'll just throw them away. Fang Yu landed on a boulder and thought back to his previous encounter. He couldn't help but feel a little discouraged. They were both from the Emperor realm, and he had been nurtured by the thick earth-black tortoise for several years. But in the end, he found that there was still a huge gap between him and Yang Kai. Just as he was feeling dejected, he suddenly noticed that the boulder under his feet was a little strange. It looked like a blooming lotus flower with layer upon layer, and he was standing in the middle of it. He couldn't help but raise his brow and look at it with interest. In the next moment, the ground beneath his feet shook, and the stone lotus suddenly closed. Fang Yu was caught off guard and was directly trapped in the middle, unable to escape. He was shocked in his heart. It was truly a case of when it rains, the boat meets the wind. After the stone lotus swallowed Fang Yu, it immediately rose from the ground, and its roots turned into 2 long legs, flying into the distance. Inside the stone lotus, Fang Yu shouted, "Immovable as a mountain." 10 days later, Yang Kai climbed to the top of a mountain and headed towards a certain place on the peak under Pu Baixiong's guidance. It didn't take long for them to reach their destination. Pu Baixiong jumped down from Yang Kai's shoulder and shouted, little gourd, Master Pu is here to see you." The reason he came here was because Pu Baixiong told Yang Kai that there was also a Saint Herb here. In this elder's land, there weren't many Saint Herbs that could transform into human form, but they weren't few either. Pu Baixiong knew that there were 7 or 8 kinds of Saint Herbs, each of which was extraordinary and had different effects. Take the 2 kinds that Yang Kai obtained for example. The bunch of berries on Pu Baixiong's head had extraordinary medicinal effects. Not only did it have healing properties, but it also had the ability to improve one's cultivation. It could be said to be an extremely rare species. The mysterious rainbow mushroom had the ability to cause illusions. When the invisible spores spread out, an ordinary cultivator wouldn't be able to resist them. When Yang Kai fell into the fog, he was careless and fell into it. In the end, he had to rely on the demon eye of annihilation and the soul-warming lotus to keep his mind clear. There was also Xiang Ying's purple bamboo, which seemed to have the ability to break through 10,000 techniques. Not all Saint Herbs were for consumption. When plants and trees gained sentience, they could transform into human form and become Saint Herbs. At the top of this mountain, there was another Saint Herb. According to Pu Baixiong, it was a gourd vine. There were 7 gourds on this vine, each of which corresponded to the power of yin and yang, and the 5 elements. The quality of these 7 gourds was extremely good. With the help of the power of yin and yang, and the 5 elements, a cultivator could condense the corresponding Tao seal. It could be said that if one could obtain this gourd vine, they would have an inexhaustible supply of cultivation resources. However, although Yang Kai had gone through a lot of hardships to reach this place, he couldn't detect any signs of life with his divine sense. Pu Baixiong shouted a few more times, stretching out his roots and scratching his head. Where did this gourd go? Yang Kai frowned slightly and walked over to a place. After looking around for a while, he said, "No need to shout." Hearing this, Pu Baixiong rushed over and climbed onto Yang Kai's shoulder. Following Yang Kai's gaze, he saw some traces of battle in front of him, filled with the power of the 5 elements. He immediately shouted, "Who did this little gourd fight with?" Yang Kai nodded his head and said, "I'm afraid that someone beat us to it." Previously, when he went to look for the purple bamboo, it was the same. It was only later that he found out that the purple bamboo was in Xiang Ying's hands. In the past 10 days, Pu Baixiong had instructed Yang Kai to look for those transformed sacred herbs. Unfortunately, they didn't find anything at every place they went. Those sacred herbs were either hidden or had been snatched away by someone else. This was already the third place that Yang Kai had run to, and the 3 sacred herbs, including the little gourd, were nowhere to be seen. Yang Kai wasn't too sure what happened to the other sacred herbs, but the sacred herb here should have been snatched away by someone else. The traces of battle here were very scattered, which meant that many people had besieged that sacred herb. No matter how extraordinary that gourd vine was, it would have been difficult for 2 fists to fight against 4 hands. There were also many bloodstains that hadn't dried up yet on the ground, which should have been caused by the gourd vine. Pu Baixiong said in annoyance, "If we had known, we would have come over faster." "Master, don't be afraid. I'll bring you to find Aku. That fellow's place is only a 3-day journey from here." The little mushroom shrunk its neck. "Don't go find Aku, right? Every time I see him, I'll be in trouble." Pu Baixiong reprimanded. "Master wants the sacred herb. Who are you to tell him what to do?" The little mushroom pouted angrily and turned its head to the side in a fit of pique. Yang Kai shook his head. "No need, proper business is more important. Bring me to that fruit tree." Close to 200,000 people had rushed into the Elder's land, and even if there were countless casualties recently, more than half of them were still alive. These people were active in various parts of the Elder's land, and if there were any good things, they would have long been dug out by them. Those sacred herbs were the best example. Yang Kai was afraid that if he delayed any longer, even the primordial spirit fruit would be taken by someone else. At that time, he wouldn't be able to report to Zhu Jiuyin, and he and the others would be in danger. "Are we going to find the old tree?" Pu Baixiong replied. "All right, but master, you have to be careful. That old tree is not to be trifled with, and the place where he lives is filled with danger. If you're not careful, you'll be in trouble. You just have to lead the way." Pu Baixiong immediately pointed the way for Yang Kai, and after descending the mountain, Yang Kai sped along the way. He didn't stop along the way, and from time to time, he would encounter a cultivator rushing back and forth. There were also many people fighting endlessly, and almost every moment, there would be people dying in the Elder's land. After traveling for less than 2 days, Pu Baixiong said, "Master, we're almost there. Do you see that mountain in front? The old tree lives on that mountain." Yang Kai looked up, and indeed, there was a tall mountain in the distance, but because it was too far away, he couldn't see it clearly. Right at this time, Yang Kai suddenly felt something, and turned his head to a direction, only to see a figure rushing towards the mountain. That person wasn't old, looking to be in his early 20s, but his chi was extremely condensed, showing that his foundation was solid. What Yang Kai cared about wasn't this person, but something on his shoulder. It was a stalk of sacred herb. There was a stalk of holy medicine that looked like a bitter gourd. Its entire body was wrinkled, and there was a face on the gourd. It was gloomy and miserable, and its brows were tightly knitted. It was as if all the misfortune in the world had gathered on its body, and it had an expression that said that it had nothing left to live for. "Aku!" Little Mushroom immediately cried out. Chapter 4094. Was this the Aku that Grape and Little Mushroom had mentioned before? Yang Kai's expression changed as he carefully sized up the sacred medicine Aku. He did not know whether to laugh or cry. The appearance of this sacred medicine was terrible, and he did not know what magical effects it had. Right at this moment, Aku sighed heavily. "I'm Ku." This long sigh seemed to want to squeeze out all his internal organs. Yang Kai only felt his mind shake, and a feeling of depression surged uncontrollably in his heart. He suddenly felt that everything was meaningless. So what if he had wasted more than 10 years in the Great Void Realm and collected unimaginable wealth? It was nothing more than a pile of dead things piled up in his space ring. So what if he had risked his life to search for the natural spirit fruit in this land of no elders? In the end, it was Zhu Jiuyin who benefited, and he could not even eat a piece of the fruit. He had spent so much effort to jump out of the shackles of the universe and come to the outside world. He had narrowly escaped death several times, But what could he get in return? Perhaps by the time he found the world tree, the star boundary would have already collapsed, and the billions of creatures in the star boundary would have long disappeared. All kinds of negative emotions hidden in the depths of his heart surged up together with the sacred medicine Aku's sigh, almost completely drowning his mind. His figure slowly slowed down as he lost sight of the target of the battle. On Yang Kai's shoulder, Pu Baixiong covered his face with his roots and choked with sobs. I, Pu Baixiong, will change my name to Pu 99 Xiong from now on. How can I go out and meet people? Just let me die. The little mushroom sat on Yang Kai's shoulder and wailed. Why am I crying? I'm so sad, wah-ha. Yang Kai groaned and bit the tip of his tongue hard, and the taste of blood filled his mouth. With the soul-warming lotus protecting his soul, he finally recovered his mind. He could not help but break out in a cold sweat as he looked at the sacred medicine Aku with fear. This thing was really strange. No wonder little mushroom was so afraid of him before, and said that every time he saw him, he felt that it was extremely bitter. Now that he looked at it, it was indeed so. That sigh sounded normal, but it had a mysterious power that stirred up the dark side of everyone's heart, making them unable to control themselves. The one who got Ku was a young man with a fair complexion. He didn't look much older than Yang Kai. At this moment his face was gloomy. He punched Ku's head and gritted his teeth. Shut up. Don't talk when I don't let you. Ku shrank his head after being hit, and his wrinkled face became even more gloomy. He sighed heavily and said, But I'm really suffering. The young man staggered and almost fell to the ground. He didn't even look at Yang Kai and quickly left. After he left, Yang Kai heaved a heavy sigh of relief. Grape and the little mushroom also gradually recovered. They wiped the corners of their eyes and blinked blankly. They did not know why they were so heartbroken just now. Did we meet Aku? Pu Baixiong asked in surprise. Yang Kai nodded slightly and looked at the mountain in the distance. The young man seemed to have the same goal as him. He found this place so quickly because of Pu Baixiong's guidance, so the young man should have been guided by Ku. In that case, the group of people who got the sacred medicine would definitely have those sacred medicine to lead the way. It wouldn't be long before they gathered here. I knew it. Nothing good will happen when we meet Ku. This guy is simply a jinx. Pu Baixiong cursed. Are you sure that the fruit tree is on that mountain? Yang Kai asked. Pu Baixiong said. Yes, the old tree has always been on that mountain, and has never moved its nest. Yang Kai took a light breath. It seems that we have to meet Ku. After saying that, his body swayed and he rushed in that direction. The destination was not too far away from Yang Kai, but it was more than that. It was at least 2,000 miles away. Pu Baixiong reminded him along the way. Master, you must be careful. Nothing good will happen when you meet Ku. He didn't say anything to you just now, right? Yang Kai said. No, he only said that he was bitter. Only then did Pu Baixiong heave a sigh of relief. That's good, that's good. If he said anything to you, then it would be bad. Yang Kai didn't understand, but he didn't want to ask. 2 hours later, Yang Kai gradually approached the mountain. Suddenly, his expression changed and he stared at the mountain. What entered his eyes was a majestic fruit tree standing on the mountain peak. The tree's crown was so huge that it covered the entire mountain peak. The innate fruit tree. Yang Kai's eyes lit up. Pu Baixiong was right. The old tree had taken root here. As long as he could get his hands on one of the innate fruit trees, he could exchange it for the safety of Yueha and the others. And this was his main goal in entering the land of elders. However, what made Yang Kai a little surprised was that he actually felt a faint trace of world force coming from the mountain peak. He couldn't help but frown. Where did this world force come from? It had to be known that in the great cosmological realm, the heaven-opening realm's small universe was sealed, so they couldn't use world force at all. If not for this, Yang Kai and the others wouldn't have been able to shine in the Emperor realm. Those heaven-opening realm cultivators would have already snatched away all the good things in the great cosmological realm. And those who entered the land of elders were all cultivators of the Emperor realm. These cultivators didn't have the heaven-opening realm in their bodies, so they couldn't use world force. But where the innate fruit tree was, there was indeed a faint trace of world force spreading out. At this time, a large number of cultivators had gathered at the foot of the mountain. Roughly counting, there were at least 1,000 cultivators present, and all of them were looking up at the mountain peak, staring fixedly at the innate fruit tree, greed gleaming in their eyes. Among the many cultivator, some were alone, some were in groups of 3 to 5, and some were in gangs. The largest group had more than 200 people, and they were obviously from the same force. Kai Yang's eyes swept over the crowd, and he saw several familiar faces. Aku and the young man he met on the way were already here, standing alone at the side with their hands behind their backs. Their expressions were arrogant, and they seemed to be out of tune with the people around them. There was also Xiang Ying, who was holding the purple bamboo and nodding slightly at Yang Kai. With the guidance of the purple bamboo, he could naturally find this place. At this moment, Yang Kai felt something and suddenly turned his head to look in a direction, only to see a short man who looked extremely strong retracting his gaze indifferently. There was a vine wrapped around the man's body, and on the vine hung 7 small gourds. Yang Kai frowned slightly. Although it was only for a moment, he clearly felt a trace of hostility. In other words, this short man seemed to be hostile to him. However, Yang Kai had never seen this person before, and did not know where he had offended him. What he was concerned about was the vine on the man's body. It was obviously a sacred medicine, and should be the small gourds that Grape had mentioned before. The 7 small gourds corresponded to the power of yin and yang, and the power contained in each small gourd was different. The short man was injured and covered in blood. He should have been in a battle with someone, and judging from his travel-worn appearance, he had probably just arrived here not long ago. "Brother Yang!" A shout was heard. Yang Kai turned his head, and saw Suzhen walking over. The little fatty was smiling wholeheartedly, and as he walked over, he looked at Pu Baixiong and Little Mushroom on Yang Kai's shoulder with great interest. When he came closer, he said, "Is this the sacred medicine?" He was the carrier chosen by Zhu Yan, and had received many benefits from Zhu Yan. Although he had been cultivating in seclusion all these years, he still kept in touch with Yang Kai. It could be said that in the entire great cosmological realm, besides Yu He and the others, he was the closest to Yang Kai. "Brother Su," Yang Kai greeted. Su Zhen clicked his tongue and said, "I heard that there are only 7 or 8 sacred medicines in the land of agelessness. Brother Yang is really lucky to have 2 of them. It's really enviable." "It's just luck." Yang Kai smiled faintly. Su Zhen stared at the grape on Pu Baixiong's head with great interest. "This grape? What's the effect of eating it?" Pu Baixiong flew into a rage. "Eat your head. Little fatty, get over here. Uncle Pu will fight you for 300 rounds. Brandishing his roots, he was like a fox borrowing the tiger's might, baring his fangs and brandishing his claws. Previously, when Kai Yang had eaten one of his grapes, he was still brooding over it. Now that he saw this little fatty having ideas about his grapes, he immediately became unhappy. "Interesting little thing." Su Zhen chuckled. He would not lower himself to Pu Baixiong's level. "Brother Su, since you found this innate fruit tree, why are you still here?" Yang Kai asked suspiciously. Thousands of people had gathered here, and were staring at the fruit tree on the top of the mountain, but no one came up the mountain. This made him a little confused. Su Zhen shook his head and sighed. "It's not that simple. You see, this mountain is calm now, but in fact it's full of hidden dangers. It's fine if you don't enter the mountain, but once you do, great danger will descend. Many people have already entered before, but unfortunately, none of them survived." Yang Kai's heart trembled when he heard this. He raised his head and looked carefully. Sure enough, there were many corpses of cultivators on the mountain. Roughly counting, there were at least 100 of them. These people died in all kinds of strange ways. Some were turned into stone sculptures, some were burned beyond recognition, and some were covered in wounds. It was a horrible sight. They should be the cultivator that entered the mountain before, but unfortunately, they all met with misfortune. But waiting like this is not a solution. Yang Kai frowned slightly. Su Zhen said, "Everyone is waiting, and no one wants to be the one to take the lead. This is a stalemate." Yang Kai understood. Most likely, The people gathered here wanted to observe for a while longer to see if there were any flaws in the dangers in the mountain that could be exploited. Chapter 4095. Tion's organization had risen in the great cosmological realm and was founded by Ding Yi. He had gathered many people over the years. The land of elders excluded those from the heaven-opening realm, and only those from the emperor realm could enter. Tion had a great advantage, because they were all from the emperor realm. Previously, in the Rainbow Tunnel, Ding Yi had led Tion's group to block the tunnel and cause chaos, resulting in countless casualties. However, he had suffered at the hands of Yang Kai many years ago, and almost lost his life. Ever since then, he had been extremely wary of Yang Kai, so he had always given Yang Kai face. Whether it was on the Origin Magnetic Mountain or in the Rainbow Tunnel, he had always been kind to him. Ding Yi also had wounds on his body, so it was probably not a peaceful journey. There were less than 1,000 people at the foot of the mountain, but Tion had brought over 2,000 to 3,000 people, which was almost 2 to 3 times the number of people here. Who wouldn't be afraid? Such a huge force could completely control the situation here. In an instant, Tion's group had already arrived at the foot of the mountain. Ding Yi carried the ghost head saber and looked around. Suddenly, his eyes focused on someone, and he said angrily, "You're really looking for something by chance. You little thief, how dare you steal my sacred medicine? Now that I've caught you, let's see if you'll die." The saber pointed forward, and the target was the short man who had obtained the gourd vine. The short man frowned slightly, obviously finding it a little tricky. If Ding Yi was alone, he naturally wouldn't be afraid. The gourd vine's power was extraordinary. Even if there were 10 or 100 Ding Yi, it would be a piece of cake. However, Tion had too many people. If they really fought, he would definitely be at a disadvantage. After pondering for a moment, the short man said, "Ding Yi, sacred medicine is extraordinary, and it belongs to the capable. Since it chose me, it means that we are fated. Why do you have to force it?" "Fated your ass." Ding Yi was burning with anger. "If you hadn't interfered, this sacred medicine would have been in my pocket. You are despicable and shameless, secretly stealing my sacred medicine. And now you have the face to say this?" The short man snorted. "You keep saying that this is your sacred medicine. Call it and see if it responds to you." Ding Yi said angrily, "Call me Grandpa and see if I respond to you." The two of them quarreled fiercely, attracting the attention of countless people. Yang Kai also showed a look of understanding. Previously, under the guidance of Pu Baixiong and the little mushroom, he had gone to look for the gourd vine. But who would have thought that someone would beat him to it? From the traces left behind, there should have been a battle, and it was a battle with quite a number of people. From the looks of it, it should be Ding Yi who led Tion's men and fought with the gourd vine. However, at the crucial moment, the short man took advantage of the situation. Anyone who encountered such a thing would probably be filled with anger and would definitely not let it go. Ding Yi had led a group of people to find this place. He probably did not expect to encounter this little thief who wanted to steal the saint medicine. However, since he had encountered him, he naturally would not let him go so easily. "Now that the saint medicine is in my hands, what are you going to do?" Although the short man was facing 1,000 people from Tion alone, he wasn't afraid at all. Ding Yi laughed sinisterly. "What else can I do? Of course, I'll kill you and take the sacred medicine back. In this life, no one can take advantage of me, Ding Yi." With that said, the cloak behind him shook, and the thousands of people under him immediately moved. Tion had been established for more than 10 years, and it was established when the great cosmological realm had just opened. All these years, under the leadership of Ding Yi, Tion's people were active in various places in the great cosmological realm. They had experienced countless big and small battles, and even resisted several waves of beast tides. At this moment, there was no need for the leader to say anything, and everyone carried out their duties. In an instant, thousands of people formed a formation and surrounded the short man. The short man's face became increasingly gloomy. "Ding Yi, the connate fruit tree is right in front of us. If we can obtain the connate spirit fruit, wouldn't we obtain more benefits than a saint medicine? Can we settle our grudges after we fight for the spirit fruit? The short man suggested. Dingy pointed with his blade. In front of the enemy, I don't care about the spirit fruit. Tell me, do you want me to kill you with one slash? Or do you want me to kill you with one slash? The short man shook his head and sighed. Looks like there's no way to be kind. Sigh. I didn't want to kill you, but since you want to die, I'll fulfill your wish. As he said so, he shook the gourd vine. The 7 little gourds hanging on the vine rolled down and turned into little people in an instant. Each of them was wearing a green shirt, barefooted, and had a little gourd of different colors on their heads. One of the gourds raised his hand and said crisply, I'm eldest baby. Another gourd squatted down and said crisply, I'm second baby. Another gourd came over and cupped his eyes like a monkey looking at the sea. I'm third baby. The fourth gourd stood with his arms crossed and said solemnly, I'm fourth baby. With 2 whooshing sounds, 2 gourds flew up to the shoulders of the 4 gourds and stood on one leg. I'm fifth baby. I'm sixth baby. The last gourd flipped in the air and stood on top of the other gourds. He put his hands on his waist and laughed loudly. I'm seventh baby. The gourds said in unison. We're the 7 gourd brothers. Yang Kai was dumbfounded. Beside him, Su Zhen's mouth twitched. This saint medicine is quite interesting. Pu Baixiong snorted. What a trick. On the other hand, the little mushroom had stars in her eyes. She clenched her fists and said, Gourd brothers, be careful. The 7 gourds turned their heads and chuckled at the little mushroom. Ding Yi's face darkened as he pointed his saber. Kill this little thief for me. Don't hurt the gourds. As soon as he finished speaking, an overwhelming number of attacks were launched toward the short man. The gourds immediately rolled into a ball. Eldest baby rushed forward and shouted crisply, Look at my indestructible golden body. Golden light shone brightly, and a layer of golden light screen instantly enveloped a radius of 30 feet. When the countless attacks hit the light screen, more than half of them were offset by the light screen. Yang Kai's expression changed. 5th grade metal elemental. The power that eldest baby used was actually a 5th grade metal elemental power. The metal elemental power turned into a shield and was impregnable. Although there were many Tion's people, there were not many who could condense 5th grade power. When the power below the 5th grade bombarded the light screen, it only caused ripples to appear on the light screen. Only attacks with 5th grade power could cause a substantial impact on the light screen. However, there were too many attacks, so the defense gathered by the metal elemental power could not resist them. It only lasted for a short moment before it was broken. However, this short moment of effort had won the short man a chance to live. The other 6 gourds each activated their own power. Yin Yang and the 5 elements gathered and turned into layers of protection around the short man. After these 7 layers of protection were broken, all the attacks had disappeared without a trace. The short man snorted coldly. The gourd vine in his hand shook violently as he shouted, Go! 3rd baby and 4th baby immediately pounced toward the crowd. In midair, each of them took a deep breath and then exhaled. 3rd baby spat out an extremely pure water elemental power, while 4th baby spat out a blazing fire. Water and fire fused together and exploded. Among the crowd, an incomparably huge impact surged. Miserable cries rang out. Tion's hundreds of cultivators all suffered varying degrees of damage and fell from the sky like dumplings. At the same time, the gourd vine in the short man's hand shook again. 6th baby and 7th baby turned into 2 long streaks of yin and yang that crossed each other. From a distance, it was like an incomparably huge pair of scissors that cut through Tion's crowd. Chi chi chi. The sound of blood spurting out could be heard. Dozens of cultivators were cut in half at the waist. Their internal organs were exposed to the air and fell uncontrollably. There were people in midair who frantically stuffed their intestines back into their abdomens. However, they were unable to recover their lost vitality. All the cultivators who saw this scene were horrified. Yang Kai's expression also turned cold. He did not expect this gourd sacred medicine to be so powerful. The 7 gourds corresponded to the power of yin, yang, and 5 elements. Each of them was at the 5th grade. An ordinary cultivator would not be able to contend against them. In just one exchange, Dtion had suffered a great loss. He had lost as many as 200 men. No wonder this short man was so calm despite being surrounded by Dtion. It turned out that he had something to rely on. Amazing, Suzhen praised. His eyes lit up as he looked at the gourd vine. Anyone who saw this thing would feel jealous. However, although the gourd vine was powerful, Dtion had the advantage in numbers. Furthermore, he was experienced in battle. Although he suffered a loss, he did not panic. Facing the yin and yang scissors, thousands of people formed dozens of battle formations. With hundreds of people in each formation, they pressed forward and trapped the yin and yang scissors. There were also hundreds of elites who completely ignored the small gourds and charged toward the short man. There were still 3 gourds left beside the short man. They corresponded to the power of metal, wood, and earth respectively. Seeing the enemies closing in, the short man's expression did not change. He shook the gourd vine again. Eldest baby immediately turned into a streak of golden light and rushed forward. At the front of the battle formation, a cultivator reached out and grabbed eldest baby. He chuckled. "Little gourd, you dare to walk into the trap?" He had seen eldest baby use the indestructible golden body before, and thought that the gourd's main power was defense. However, Ding Yi's expression changed. He shouted, "Careful." As soon as he said that, he saw eldest baby throw out a punch. With a loud bang, the leading cultivator was hit by a powerful force. His body flew back uncontrollably. In midair, his arm exploded inch by inch. Even the bones were shattered. What great strength! Yang Kai sighed. Metal specializes in killing. This person was too careless. Suzhen also shook his head and sighed. After sending the leader flying, eldest baby suddenly spun. His hands and feet, along with every part of his body, turned into an indestructible weapon. In the blink of an eye, he had pierced through the battle formation. Dewa's figure didn't stop. He turned into a golden drill and charged straight at him from the back. Another battle formation came from the side. The leader shouted, "Sacrifice to the inescapable net." A large net covered the sky and covered eldest baby's head. Chapter 4096. The large net was tough, and it was clear that it had been refined from extremely precious materials. Coupled with the fact that over 100 people had formed a battle formation to activate it, its power was truly extraordinary. It actually managed to trap the gourd within. No matter how the gourd tried to break free, it was temporarily unable to break free. The short man's face darkened slightly. Clearly, he had not expected Dtion's group to be so difficult to deal with. Yang Kai could not help but look at them in a new light. All this time, he had thought that Dtion's group was as loose as sand. Now, it seemed that Ding Yi had some tricks up his sleeve. He was actually able to gather this group of stragglers into an extraordinary force. A few more battle formations charged over, transforming into rolling torrents that crashed toward the short man. Meanwhile, the short man only had the earth-type and wood-type gourds left beside him. However, he remained calm. Seeing that he was about to be swallowed up by the battle formation torrents, he formed a seal with one hand. The 5th baby chuckled, and an earth-yellow light suddenly appeared on its body, enveloping the short man within. It formed a protective barrier that was even more sturdy than the eldest baby's indestructible golden body. The earth-type element was originally focused on defense, just like the earth-type power that Yang Kai had condensed. It was not surprising that he was able to condense the Dragon Shield secret technique to have such power. Amidst rumbling sounds, the attacks rained down one after another, but they were all blocked by the barrier of light. The remaining wood-type gourd spun and plunged into the ground. Immediately after, the ground cracked, and numerous roots rolled and extended underground like earth dragons, causing the ground to undulate. Whoosh, 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 numerous roots pierced out from the ground, piercing through one battle formation after another, instantly causing great damage to Dtion. There was also the water baby and fire baby, working together to unleash the fire and water explosion technique. There was also the yin and yang gourd brothers transforming into giant scissors that pierced through the void, weaving back and forth as they reaped the cultivator's life. The short man relied on a single gourd vine, and the 7 small gourds on the vine to engage in a heated battle with Dition's group. Yongkai gasped in amazement as he watched. The power of this gourd vine was actually so terrifying, which was something he never expected. This was definitely the most powerful holy medicine. Even though he had grapes and small mushrooms in his hands, he couldn't help but be a little envious of the short man's luck. To be able to obtain such a holy medicine, this guy's luck was really as good as the heavens. What a pity. This fellow's luck is pretty good, and his strength isn't bad either. It's a pity that he met Dition. Sujin sighed at the side. Yongkai also nodded in agreement. Although the short man's performance was stunning, he was still alone after all, while Dition had the advantage in numbers. If this continued, he would be at a disadvantage sooner or later. The key was to see how long the Earth Child could protect him. Sure enough, in less than 30 breaths of time, Tuwa suddenly blushed and said in a muffled voice, "I can't hold on anymore." The protective barrier it activated was now shaking, and on the verge of collapse. It had endured too many attacks. Although it was a protective barrier condensed by the 5th rank earth element, it could not withstand the endless attacks. The short man's expression changed slightly. At this moment, Dingy suddenly shouted, "I've been waiting for this moment for a long time." He had been watching coldly from the sidelines, and did not participate in the battle. Even if his subordinates were injured or killed, he was still indifferent. It was obvious that he was looking for an opportunity to make the final decision. And now, it was time for him to make a move. An incomparably scorching power suddenly spread out from the demon-headed broadsword. Dingy raised the broadsword in his hand and slashed down fiercely with a cold and resolute expression. The moment Dingy moved, both Yongkai and Sujin could not help but exclaim in surprise. They raised their heads to look at him, because the scorching power lingering on his broadsword seemed to be somewhat unusual. Sujin exclaimed, "7th rank fire element." This Ding-yi had actually condensed the power of the 7th rank fire element. There was a flash of brilliance in Yongkai's eyes, and then he came to a realization. In the great cosmological realm, if one wanted to condense the power of the 7th rank, one could only rely on the power of sacred spirits. Zhu Jiuyin had also said that there were indeed many 7th rank treasures in the great cosmological realm, but they had long been used up over the years. Yongkai had wanted to find a 7th rank metal element treasure, but could not find one. Zhu Jiuyin's million-strong army had searched every corner of the great cosmological realm, but returned empty-handed. However, not having a 7th rank treasure did not mean that it was impossible to condense the power of the 7th rank. The inner cores of the sacred spirits were at least 7th rank. Dingyi was able to display the 7th grade fire element because he had the help of a holy spirit. In other words, this guy was also a bearer. A holy spirit had helped him to condense the 7th grade fire element with the power of its own Naiden. It was not strange when one thought about it. When sacred spirits looked for their own bearers, they would naturally choose a cultivator with good aptitude and great potential. Ding-yi was a nobody before entering the great cosmological realm, but after entering the great cosmological realm, he shone brightly and created Dition immediately. After all these years of wandering in the great cosmological realm, he had a reputation, so it was not surprising that he was targeted by a sacred spirit. And to be able to help him condense the power of the fire element, it was definitely a sacred spirit of the fire element. Yongkai had seen at least 50 sacred spirits in the periphery of the Elder's land, and there were only a few sacred spirits of the fire element. He did not know which sacred spirit had favored Ding-yi. Just as he was thinking, the ghost head saber in Ding-yi's hand bloomed with a dazzling light. When the chirping sound was heard, a one-legged fire bird that looked like a crane flew out from the saber. Its wingspan was 1,000 feet, and it carried the power to burn the world and crashed toward the short man. "Bai Fong!" Yongkai and Sujin exclaimed in unison. Everything was clear now. Ding-yi was the bearer of the Bai Fong. The Bai Fong was a sacred spirit of the fire element, so it was not difficult for the power of the inner core to help Ding-yi condense the 7th grade fire element. However, Dingyi was really impressive. His Dao seal could withstand the impact of the 7th grade fire element. Obviously, his foundation was solid and his foundation was not bad. Otherwise, even with the help of the Baifeng, he could not have achieved this. In the great cosmological realm, there were many rising stars who shone brightly. Every time the great cosmological realm opened, there would be countless experts of the younger generation. In the future, when they grew up, they would become giants of the 3,000 worlds. The Baifeng's fire was of the 7th grade, and the power of the Earth Child was only of the 5th grade. Naturally, it was impossible for him to block Dingyi's angry attack. The huge Baifeng had just touched the Earth element defense when the defense shattered. The Earth Child fell to the ground, scared silly, and his eyes were blank. Seeing that the short man was about to die under the saber, who knew that he would suddenly clench his fist and smash it upward. "You're courting death." Dingyi laughed when he felt that the situation was settled. His laughter came to an abrupt end. A ball of golden light burst out from the short man's fist, and the rich power of the golden lion fluctuated. The power of the golden lion was also of the 7th grade. The golden light was dazzling, and it turned into a huge exotic beast that crashed toward the Baifeng. "Jin Wu." Suzhen stared. A cold light flashed in Yang Kai's eyes as he recognized the origin of the exotic beast. It was the image of the Holy Spirit Jin Wu. When he was brought to the Elder's land by Zhu Jiuyin, he was chased by Jin Wu and the other 4 Holy Spirits. As a result, he and Zhu Jiuyin spent a lot of effort to reach the Elder's land. He did not know what kind of enmity there was between Jin Wu and Zhu Jiuyin, but he was the one who led the chase. Was this short man the bearer chosen by Jin Wu? Before this, Yang Kai knew that many bearers hid their identities. After all, it was beneficial to hide one's identity in order to participate in the battle of spirit seizing. Except for a few bearers who were in the open, most bearers hid underwater. Ever since he entered the Elder's land, Yang Kai had already met several bearers like this. Xiang Ying was one, Dingyi was another, Fang Yu was another, and this short man in front of him was another. These were only the ones he had met. What about those he had not met yet? These bearers were all nurtured by the Holy Spirits behind them. Each of them had their own strengths. Just by looking at the battle before him, he knew that the final battle of spirit seizing would be a fierce battle. Whether it was Jin Wu or the Baifeng, they were all veteran Holy Spirits who had lived for countless years. They spared no effort in nurturing their bearers, and even used the power of their own inner cores to help them condense the 5 elements. The strength of the 2 Holy Spirits was similar, so the power of the attacks unleashed by Dingyi and the short man was similar as well. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the huge beast and the Baifeng clashed in midair. Cries and roars rang out incessantly, and golden and fiery light intertwined as a terrifying shockwave spread out in all directions. Tian and the others were thrown off their feet, and even the thousands of spectators couldn't help but retreat. Dingyi groaned, and his face was slightly pale. It was obvious that the technique he had just used had taken a toll on his body. The short man also took a few steps back, and one of his feet stepped into the ground. The ground cracked inch by inch, with the bottom of his feet as the center. The cracks were as dense as a spider web. The moment he steadied himself, the short man's face turned ferocious. Chapter 4097. Tracing the source of that power. Dingyi looked over and saw Yang Kai reaching out a giant hand towards him, space twisting and distorting around it. Understanding that Yang Kai had saved his life at a critical moment, Dingyi was immediately overwhelmed with gratitude. Looking at the short man, Kai Yang grinned. "It's you bastard?" Before his voice fell, Dingyi had already sent a palm towards the short man, causing the yuan qi in heaven and earth to tremble and transform into a giant blue hand that enveloped the world. The short man's face changed slightly as he took a deep breath and shook the gourd vine in his hand. With a series of whooshing sounds, the 7 gourd brothers flew over and landed on the gourd vine, turning into 7 small gourds. The power of the gourd vine soared, and with just a light blow, it broke the yuan qi hand. The short man did not hesitate, and instead formed a seal with one hand, before his figure suddenly disappeared. Still want to run? Yang Kai coldly snorted, and urged his space principles to seal off the world. Faintly perceiving a trace of vitality, Yang Kai threw a punch in that direction. With a muffled groan, the short man's figure reappeared. But he had already rushed into the mountain, blood spurting from his mouth. Obviously, he had been hit by Yang Kai's punch, and had suffered a great loss. Turning his head, he glared at Yang Kai with incomparable resentment before his figure disappeared again. Yang Kai frowned, his divine sense unable to perceive the short man's existence. Of course, this was due to the mysterious concealment technique this guy used, but more importantly, the situation on the mountain was somewhat strange, suppressing the extension of his divine sense. Otherwise, it would have been impossible for the short man to escape so easily. Is there a grudge? Su Jin looked at Yang Kai curiously. Just now, when Kai Yang had suddenly attacked, it had made him realize this point. Yang Kai stared at the spot where the short man disappeared, and nodded lightly. Su Jin said thoughtfully, "That divine technique, just now should be the Tao-breaking seal. Is this person from Ziqiong Blessed Land? But why haven't I seen him before? If he really is from Purple Jade Blessed Land, then Brother Yang will have to be careful." Yang Kai snorted. "Who cares if he's from Purple Jade Blessed Land or not? I'm going to kill him." Before entering the old land, in the colorful channel, Yang Kai had been attacked by the Tao-breaking seal. If he had not strengthened the seal with Tao-E divine water, he would have suffered a big loss at that time. At that time, although he searched for the first time, he could not find the trace of the attacker. He still learned the information of the Tao-breaking seal from Chu Huashang. He didn't expect to see this divine technique again in this place. In other words, it was most likely that the short man was the one who had ambushed them in the colorful channel. Moreover, the various methods and information he had displayed were consistent with Yang Kai's guess. First of all, this guy was proficient in a secret technique that could conceal his aura and figure. At that time in the colorful channel, Yang Kai was unable to find any trace of him. This point had been confirmed. The short man was also proficient in a secret technique that could conceal his aura and figure. Once again, there was no hatred for no reason, and no kindness for no reason. Yang Kai didn't know why he had ambushed him, and wanted to kill him. But if this grudge was extended by Jin Wu and Zhu Jiuyin, then it made sense. Jin Wu and Zhu Jiuyin had a deep grudge against each other. As the bearer of Jin Wu, the short man must have received instructions from Jin Wu before he entered the elder's land. Jin Wu wanted him to think of a way to kill himself inside and cut off Zhu Jiuyin's future. Su Jin was a little troubled. "Brother Yang, if that person is really a disciple of Ziqiong Blessed Land, I'm afraid I can't help much." Although there was competition between the Blessed Land and Blessed Land, there were also good relations between them. The Divine Cauldron Heavens and Ziqiong Blessed Land had a good relationship. If the disciples of the two families met outside, even if they didn't support each other, at least they wouldn't make things difficult for each other. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to answer to their masters when they returned. Yang Kai said, "I won't make things difficult for Brother Su." Su Jin sighed, but he didn't have any intention of persuading him. After pondering for a moment, he said, "If it's really a matter of life and death, Brother Yang, you must be careful of this thing." Yang Kai turned his head and saw Su Jin playing with his identity token in his hand. Yang Kai's expression turned serious, and he nodded slightly. For a disciple of the Blessed Land like Su Jin, the identity token wasn't just a symbol of status. There was a high possibility that it sealed a divine technique of his master. For a disciple of the Blessed Land who went out to train, this identity token was sometimes a life-saving trump card. For Su Jin to remind Yang Kai of this, it was already very kind of him. At this moment, Ding Yi came over to express his gratitude. If it wasn't for Yang Kai using the great Tao of space to move him away at the crucial moment, he would definitely have been hit by that Tao-breaking seal. In his state at that time, if he was hit, his seal would definitely be at risk of collapsing. Yang Kai's simple help was a life-saving grace to him. "I can't thank you enough. Brother Yang, if there's anything you need me or DT on for, just let me know." I won't refuse. Ding Yi was extremely heroic. After he finished speaking, he waved his hand and said, "What are you all standing there for? Go in and find that guy. I want to pull out his tendons and skin him alive." His face was ferocious, and it was obvious that he hated that short man. Among the 2,000 to 3,000 Dtian cultivators, there were hundreds of casualties, but there were still a lot of them. Under Ding Yi's order, they rushed into the mountain. Yang Kai said, "This mountain seems to be a little dangerous. Tell your men to be careful." Ding Yi was stunned. He had just arrived here and fought with that short man, so he really didn't know about this. He quickly reminded his men. Everyone received the order and immediately became cautious. When the thousands of people who were gathered here saw that Dtian's men were moving, they naturally couldn't hold back and rushed into the mountain. "Brother Yang, I'm going too. Let's meet at the peak." Su Jun clasped his hands and walked up the mountain. He didn't know whether that short man was from Ziqiong blessed land or not, but he couldn't travel together with Yang Kai. Otherwise, if Yang Kai got into a conflict with that short man, he wouldn't be able to help either of them. After thinking about it, it was safer to travel alone. Yang Kai nodded and said, "Take care." After Su Jun left, he stepped forward. As soon as he stepped into the mountain, he frowned, because this place was very strange. It was actually the same as the fog created by the little mushroom, which had the effect of suppressing divine sense, making it impossible for him to detect things too far away. Although he didn't know what mysteries this mountain had, he was sure that it was definitely dangerous. The deaths of those who entered this place before was the best proof. On the other side, Xiang Ying carried the purple bamboo and walked towards the peak of the mountain step by step. He looked at the old tree at the top of the mountain with a calm expression. 3,000 feet away, another young man was walking quickly. Someone turned to look at him and saw the saint-level medicine, Aku, squatting on his shoulder. He chuckled and said, "What is this strange thing? It's so ugly." Aku looked up at him with a bitter expression and said, "You're quite handsome, young man. You have the looks of a long life." That person laughed and tugged at the corner of his companion's clothes. He said, "This ugly thing can actually talk." With a crack, a bolt of lightning came and hit the person who spoke. The power of the lightning was extremely strong. No one knew where it came from, and there was no trace of it. Under the violent power, this person was directly blasted into pieces. Broken limbs and pieces of flesh flew all over the sky. His companion beside him was stunned. His body suddenly froze on the spot, and a chill rushed from the soles of his feet to the top of his head. If that lightning had been slightly off course, he would have been the one to die. Aku looked at him and said deeply, "You're quite handsome too." Just as he finished speaking, another bolt of lightning struck this person's body, and this person was also beaten to the point where not even his bones were left. The cultivators around were all shocked. Although they didn't know what had happened, they all instinctively moved away from Aku and looked at him as if he was a monster. Aku looked up at the sky and sighed heavily. "I'm so bitter." The cracking sounds were incessant. Previously, everyone gathered at the foot of the mountain and didn't realize the danger on the mountain. However, after stepping into the mountain, it was as if they had triggered some invisible restriction, and danger came one after another. The bolts of lightning that were born out of thin air had terrifying power. An ordinary cultivator couldn't withstand it at all. One bolt of lightning would usually take away a life. Yang Kai was also taken care of a few times. He had been vigilantly looking around. Although his divine thoughts were suppressed, he could still use them. It was just that the range was very small. Even so, he couldn't detect how the lightning was formed. By the time he discovered it, it was already too late. He could only resist it. Fortunately, his body was sturdy, and he was fine after taking a few bolts of lightning. He was just beaten until his whole body was numb, and his clothes were tattered. "Be careful of that cloud of fog," Pu Baixiong suddenly shouted. He and Little Mushroom sat on Yang Kai's shoulders, and were also vigilantly looking around. Now that they discovered something, they immediately warned him. Turning his head to look, Kai Yang saw a mass of gray mist drifting over, enveloping the dozen or so people not far away. Those people didn't pay much attention to it, But when the cloud of gray fog floated away from their location, a hair-raising scene appeared. More than a dozen white skeletons were left behind, scattered all over the ground. In the blink of an eye, more than a dozen lives were strangely buried here. Not a single sound could be heard. After the cloud of fog swallowed the flesh of more than a dozen people, it floated toward another group of people. It was only at this moment that someone cried out in alarm. "This isn't fog, it's insects." The cloud of gray fog was actually made up of countless tiny insects that couldn't even be seen with the naked eye. Seeing the cloud of insects floating toward them, some people in the group immediately attacked in panic, bombarding it with divine technique. The cloud of insects broke apart, turning into more than a dozen streaks, breaking through the group of people in an instant, and burrowing into their bodies through their nostrils. In an instant, these people trembled like sieves and screamed continuously, as if they were enduring great torment. However, it only lasted for a moment before the screams stopped. Flesh and blood disappeared, and the living creatures turned into dried bones. The cloud of insects grew much stronger and gathered together again, charging toward Yang Kai. Yang Kai's expression became solemn. Only now did he realize how dangerous this mountain was. The lightning that appeared out of thin air was one thing, but if he had some means he could still resist it. However, this cloud of insects seemed to be even more powerful than the lightning. It was simply impossible to guard against. Chapter 4098. The insect cloud silently flew towards Yang Kai, wrapping him up as his golden crow true fire ignited the insect cloud. In an instant, a series of crackling sounds filled the air as the insect cloud turned into a cloud of fire, burning the insects to ashes one by one. Along the way, there were many dangers. Not only was there the bombardment of thunder and the insect swarm, but there were also many unimaginable dangers. The ground suddenly split open, revealing an abyss that swallowed the cultivator, and then closed, silently taking their lives. Some people didn't even know when their companions disappeared. When they turned around and saw that they were all alone, they immediately felt their blood run cold. Thousands of cultivators rushed into the mountain, and in less than an incense stick's worth of time, they had lost 20 to 30% of their cultivators. Moreover, the further up the mountain one went, the greater the danger, and the more frequent the crises became. Yang Kai was hit several times, but thanks to his solid foundation, he was able to survive. However, the other cultivators were not so lucky. Whether it was the thunder or the insect swarm, they were not easy to resist. When they were halfway up the mountain, the number of people decreased sharply. Those who still had the courage to continue either had great confidence in their own strength, or had the mentality that they couldn't return empty-handed after entering a treasure mountain. Thus they gave it their all. Xiang Ying and the young man who obtained Aku were far in the lead. As for Su Zhen, he was a little behind. It was not that Su Zhen's strength was inferior to the two of them, but everyone had their own strengths and weaknesses. The purple bamboo in Xiang Ying's hand was enough to destroy all kinds of methods, and with a tap of it, it was enough to annihilate the thunder and scatter the insect swarm. The young man who obtained Aku also had extraordinary means. Yang Kai suspected that he was a bearer chosen by a sacred spirit, but this person did not reveal himself, so Yang Kai couldn't figure out his background. And this was only what was on the surface. How many bearers were lurking in the water? After all, Yang Kai had seen more than 50 sacred spirits before, and each sacred spirit had its own bearer, so there were at least 50 bearers. The short man was still nowhere to be seen, and Yang Kai had no idea where he was. As Yang Kai moved forward, he looked left and right, searching for him. A spot of light suddenly lit up not far away. When the light first appeared, it was very weak, but in the blink of an eye, it became as bright as day. An extremely terrifying aura came from the light. Amidst the crackling sounds, the lightning snakes danced wildly and spread out with the light as the center. Pu Baixiong exclaimed, "Be careful!" Yang Kai had already reached out to grab the space in front of him, and as the space principles fluctuated, he suddenly raised his hand. With a loud bang, a thunderstorm exploded high up in the sky, enveloping an area of 300 meters. Even the void within that area collapsed, forming a huge black hole. Yang Kai sucked in a breath of cold air and secretly thanked his lucky stars. Fortunately, he sensed that something was wrong and moved the thunderstorm to midair. Otherwise, if it really exploded in front of him, even his half-dragon body would not be able to withstand it. Exhaling softly, Yang Kai raised his head and looked at the mountain peak with a puzzled expression. Previously, when he was at the foot of the mountain, he had sensed that there was a subtle aura of world force permeating the mountain, and as he moved forward, this feeling became clearer and clearer. This made him feel a little confused. In the great cosmological realm, even the strength of divine spirits was greatly suppressed, and the small universe in the heaven-opening realm's body was completely sealed. If he can escape, he will have a great opportunity. If not, what will happen if he can't? Naturally, he will be trapped in the fruit for the rest of his life. Dingy said seriously, "This fruit can trap people?" Leader Ding, don't underestimate this fruit. This fruit is very famous. Sujin chuckled. Aku's master said, "Brother, may I ask what this fruit tree is? And what is this fruit?" This was what everyone wanted to know. With such a precious treasure in front of them, it would be a headache if they could not figure out its origin. Learning from the mistakes of others, no one dared to make a move on the spirit fruit again. Sujin did not hide anything and said with a serious expression, "If I'm not mistaken, this should be the legendary 3000 world tree." 3000 world tree? Everyone was surprised and looked at each other. Everyone present, except for Sujin, had not heard of this before. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.